Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's time for the Weekend Wake Up 2022 NFL Draft Show edition. My name is Vito Abinanti. That is Kyrie Thompson. You can join the conversation on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. We'll get to all of that a little bit later. You can also follow us on Twitter. But here's the best part. We are starting. As the NFL draft is starting, it's time for the 2022 NFL draft. We've got a ton to talk about, and we've got some picks coming as the Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock with the first pick. There's about 8 minutes and 30 seconds left. Kyrie, how the heck are you?
Man, this week has been a weird one for me. And right now I'm like kind of recovering from some weird, like, I don't know, like kind of semi-cold thing. Like on Monday, like I straight up could not talk. It was bad. So it's like, hey, at least I recovered enough to like, and I got the little kind of low baritone kind of thing going on right now. My voice sounds a little sexier than it normally would. So,
I don't know. It's pretty sexy.
oh, thank you.
Um, you know what? Let's jump right in. There's 8 minutes left before the first pick. The Jags have the first pick for the second straight draft. There are 8 teams with multiple first round picks, which is a little bit different than normal. The Jets and Giants each have 2 top 10 picks. And there's actually 8 teams because of those 8 teams with multiple first round picks, and they each have 2. There's actually 8 teams without a first round pick, which is also a little strange for the NFL draft. But getting right into it, since we're coming up on the first pick here, there's been a lot of talk about who may go first. There have been questions as to whether or not some of the guys who are at the very top, I mean, you're talking about guys like Aiden Hutchinson,
Yeah.
Trayvon Walker, Evan Neal, Ahmad Gardner. Uh, you know, it seems like it's been back and forth as to does Hutchinson go first? Does Walker go first? Kyrie, if you had to pin it down as far as Jacksonville goes, what they need, which of these guys? I mean, you're talking 2 defensive ends. Which of these guys may be the ones to go?
So the sense of what I've been getting from people is that it's that there's a bit of a divide in Jacksonville right now. That Trent Baalke, the general manager, wants Trayvon Walker because he's a big fan of traits, in particular length. Like Trayvon Walker is a terror bird with wings, basically. Like he's just um like his arms are freakishly long. He ran like a 4.5 and stuff like that. Like he's a mutant, right?
Did you call him a terror bird?
Yes, I did.
Is that a technical term?
So I mean they had like these old like fossil birds they call terror birds because they were just like giant, like you know, like just giant mean ass birds, right? They like lived in kind of prehistoric times. um, but yeah, so he's just a physical freak, and Balky seems to want that because and he actually cited Alden Smith as an example of why length and going for traits is important. But it sounds like Shad Khan wants Aiden Hutchinson because he's the more proven player, who's got more of the pedigree. And Trayvon Walker was probably like the third or fourth best player on that Georgia defense, right? So people are kind of like, why would you want to take him number one when he wasn't even the best player on his own team? And the answer, literally in this case, would just be for traits. I think that at this point, the smoke has probably it's probably gone up for a reason here, which is to say that I think that it's probably leaning towards Walker. I think, and that Hutchinson might then go in the next couple of picks, which I mean, no skin off his back. He's still going to make plenty of money. But I think it is fascinating in a draft where there aren't a lot of, elite quarterbacks. We'll talk about this later, I'm sure. It's like it's going to give us an opportunity to see what teams really value here. And it might be that, this is a draft where you go with potential rather than just like, oh, yeah, this guy produced well in college, but what's he going to do in the NFL when he's against NFL competition?
Right. And the pick is in for the Jaguars, so we're waiting on that. I think the consensus is kind of leaning towards exactly what you were saying. I believe Hutchinson was the guy. leading into maybe even the past week.
I think so
But
too.
the consensus sort of seems to be that Trayvon Walker is going to be the number one pick here. I don't know what your feed looks like. They're showing Trayvon Walker on screen on the one that I'm watching on ABC. Still saying that the pick is in, so we will wait for that. I do also want to get into, a couple of these other guys that, could have possibly been a number one pick, but you don't really see it typically as the first pick. The cornerback position with Ahmad Gardner, maybe Evan Neal, offensive tackle up from Alabama, and maybe someone like Kayvon Thibodeau, who's another defensive end as well. If you had to pick, maybe someone from that, let's say top 10, group that may have improved their stock even more than they already were. Maybe they were a fringe top 10, but now they might be a top 3 guy to go. Could you maybe, zone in on one of those players? I think I lost your audio here, Kyrie. I don't know what happened.
About that, it looks like the pick is about to be in. Yep, Trayvon Walker was the pick. There we go.
There you go.
So
Okay, so
and and
so you had it right.
so Trent Baalke wins. There we go. And again, it's an example of sometimes when you're, especially when you got the number one pick in the draft, it's not just about let me go with the safe pick. You want to get the maximum out of a guy, and
Right.
perhaps yeah, okay, he wasn't the best player on his defense, but if he's a good player and they think they can get more out of him, maybe than what he was even getting at Georgia, because he was getting, you know, so like outshined, quote unquote, by Jordan Davis and the Kobe Dean, right, and just like the whole crew. I mean, that defense was absurd, right? So you look at that guy and like, okay, look, his upside is greater maybe than what Aiden Hutchinson's could be. Like, not that Aiden Hutchinson's a bad athlete, right? But maybe when he goes up against longer offensive tackles, he's going to get beat more. Like, there were times when Hutchinson got handled by NFL, like draft caliber players. And so like maybe you're looking at Walker and being like, okay, he's more athletic. It'll be harder to do that to him. As far as your previous question though, I think that it's the top cornerbacks. I've been hearing things about Derek Stingley, which he's all over the board. Like, it's hard to really say where he's going to go because
Right.
of his injury, right? But before he went, before he kind of struggled with COVID year and injury, he was like the best cornerback in the universe, right? Like, he was locking everybody up.
Right.
And so people are kind of having those visions of that, and I think that, I mean, I've seen him as high as number 3, and that would surprise me, right? That he would leapfrog Gardner in that way. So I'm interested to see if that happens. The Thibodeau saga has been so interesting to me because, I mean, that guy to me is, I mean, I think he's better than Hutchinson, and he's, I think he's better than Walker too. But people start talking about well, does he love football, right? And they
Right.
get into all the interview stuff, and his personality, is rubbing people the wrong way, or what have you. And I'm just looking at this like, NFL, don't overthink this. Do not drop this man lower in the top 10 that he needs to go, because he's really good, man. He's a really good player. So that was just kind of my side rant, but it's the
Right.
corners for me that are kind of jumping up the board, as opposed to some of the other guys who are falling, actually.
So the Lions are now on the clock, and actually
Pick is
the
in.
menu has come up saying the pick is in. So we'll see what the Lions are looking to do. They need linebackers, wide receivers, cornerbacks. They're the Lions. They need pretty much
Yeah.
everybody.
I feel like odds on to me is that it's going to be Hutchinson, but I mean, again, man, like, I'm hearing things like Stingley or Sauce to the Lions, and it feels far fetched, but maybe it's not. We will
Well,
see.
let me ask you this: is that the smart play for the Lions as far as taking a guy like Hutch? I mean, okay, Michigan guy, great. Already from the area, but as far as what they need, what is that the value pick for them? To be completely honest with you, if I were the Lions, I need as much as I can, and I'm going to trade down. But it doesn't appear that that's the case here.
Nope.
So, is it the smart move?
So we're gonna find out because it's him. Hutchinson is the pick. With him, here's what I'll say, right? Like there's something to be said for taking the guy who has proven to be productive. He's got the motor that you want, right? He plays hard, and he played hard on big stages, right? He played at Michigan. He played for a college football playoff team, right? And he showed out in like big games against Ohio State, right? Like you saw him, consistently up there. Him and David Ajabo, who's going to be a really interesting case. Where's he going to go after popping the Achilles? But I think there's something to be said for going with a player like this because look, in the end, with teams like the Lions that are so often, kind of reviled for like, yeah, their picks never pan out, right? Because they're trying to hit a home run here. It's like if they hit a double with Aiden Hutchinson, that's not bad, right? Like in
Right.
the end, you have to have good players. And like for example, like again, I think Thibodeau is a better player, honestly.
Hmm.
But and I think his upside's bigger, but for example, like you wouldn't go with somebody like a Stingley or a Gardner to me there. Um
Yeah, I
even
don't know if that's a number two pick,
yeah,
especially for what the Lions need and what they what they're. It just doesn't make much sense.
yeah. And I think that in the end, right, when you're talking about what do you do in today's NFL, right? The guys that are getting paid, the guys who are, among like the biggest value, right? Is quarterbacks generally and pass rushers.
Hmm.
Maybe some wide receivers, but as well now, right? They're starting to set records, but pass rushers are among the most valuable players out there because you've got to get to the quarterback now. It's more important than ever.
Right.
So and if you have a guy who has proven that he gets to the quarterback and he's going to be coming at you from day one, you plug and play player. I think that is perfectly acceptable for the Lions to take. Like I don't know. I don't realistically know what else you do there, unless it's Thibodeau.
Right, right. The Houston Texans are on the clock. It looks like the pick is in.
They're moving
They need a
fast
whole
tonight.
bunch of stuff as well. They're not, obviously we're looking at the top of the draft here. Offensive line, edge rusher, cornerback, safety. They basically need everybody on defense,
Yeah.
at least one of everything. As far as the Texans go, trading away their franchise quarterback, going with the relative. I guess he was okay in Webb, but what if you're the Texans, which direction are you going as a football team? I don't even mean the pick. I mean, as a football team, what is your direction? Are you in full rebuild, or are you just hoping that hey, 2 years ago we were a pretty solid team, or 2.5 years ago we were a pretty solid team. We still have some of these pieces. Can we move forward?
To me, I mean, especially if you're planning on going into this, I mean, we will see. We will see. But if you're thinking about going into this with Davis Mills as your quarterback, it's a rebuild. And I think that they need so much that even if they did pick a quarterback tonight, which we'll see, even if they did take one, I mean, it's not going to change their fortunes overnight. They are
Right.
lacking in weapons. They are lacking up front. Their defense. I mean, like and they're starting backups all over the place. So I think, and again, given that you've got Lovey Smith there right now, maybe you're looking at a foundational cornerback here. So this is where I think you might see a Stingley or a Gardner. And people were kind of talking about like, well, like do Lovey Smith's defenses really need a top corner, right? Because the cover two or whatever. But I feel like he kind of addressed that, and it's just like, yeah, it's not really about the scheme anymore. You need players, right?
Right.
You can't get caught up in all that right now. Right now, they just need good players. So, I mean, you could go offensive line here. I mean, I've seen Iquanu brought up here, Ikem Iquanu. Um, but I don't know. I'm feeling like this is kind of is feeling cornerbacky to me right now. We'll see because again, the idea of Stingley going 3 after all the talk about his injury or whatever, like I'd be a little surprised. I would.
Well, and I think the key here is they need so much help on defense that I wonder if they go for value at defense where they go, later picks, they go, try to get extra second round picks, third round picks, and so on.
Yeah, because they've got
Um,
the 13th pick as well.
and the selection has been made. It was Derek Stingley Jr. So, I mean, you had it, you nailed it right there. We were talking about, well, could they go offensive line, but you nailed it with the Derek Stingley Jr. Pick.
And I mean, I admit I'm a little bit surprised, but again, right? Like I'm a little bit surprised because of the way people were talking about his injury situation. But in terms of the player, like, yo, if that man's healthy, right? Like you look at that tape from his first year, and you're not debating that. That dude was wild,
Right.
wildly good. And I mean, like you could see the way that he was moving around at his pro day. You know, the busts out a 4.3 first time anybody's seen him run in a while, right? And in the field drills, man, like he looked he looked possessed. I mean, like that dude, he was in it, absolutely. And I mean, like, just look at him, right? It's the ball skills, it's the makeup speed if somebody gets by you, and these are not like soft dudes that he's going up against. We're talking about Georgia, right? You know, it,
So let
like
me ask you this: with 5.5 left on the clock here for the Jets, I guess there's two questions here. The Jets also need a cornerback, and the direction that it seems that they should go is a guy like Ahmad Gardner. Do we see back-to-back cornerbacks here in the top five? I mean, does it make sense from the Jets standpoint of would they have another top 10 pick? So let's take the guy that fits best for us, and then we'll make do with that second pick in the top 10, or we'll trade down and get a couple extra picks.
so that's the interesting thing. I feel like they could absolutely. Hmm. It's like we'll see, but my gut says that, and again another defensive minded coach here. I could absolutely see Sauce Gardner going here, and
Hmm.
the thing to keep in mind too is that the Jets could absolutely just make that, make this pick and make the pick at number 10, or I mean at this point at number 10 you could maybe convince a team to be like, hey, you want the 10th overall pick in the draft? And it won't cost as much as it normally would because there's no quarterback there necessarily,
Right.
right? So it's like, hey, you want somebody on the fringe? So they could do that. The thing, it's going to be really interesting. Like one of the big things I'm going to be watching is who moves down, because you've been hearing Schefter reported it. I think Albert Breer reported it. A lot of teams want to move down in this draft because there's so much value between picks like 10 and 40 and even beyond, I would say. So I think day 2 and 3 are going to be the meat of this draft. Not even so much round 1. I think it's going to be day 2 and 3 where the real interesting stuff happens. But with that in mind, then maybe you go ahead and say, you know what, I'm just going to take the picks. Like I don't
Well,
know if
that kind of brings me to, you brought up something I wanted to talk about anyway. We're talking here about the Jets. This is 2022 NFL draft coverage with V and Ree from the weekend wake up. Jets are on the clock. They have their first of two top 10 picks right now. But we talked about, what do you do, especially when you have multiple first round picks, multiple top 10 picks? What's the best draft philosophy overall? Because I feel like every year you have that team, one or two teams, who go all in. They trade like 3 picks or 4 picks, they move up to get their guy. And I'm just wondering how frequently that actually works out when in reality, you're more than likely to miss on picks. In fact, I think it's below 50% of your picks actually hit. Wouldn't you be better served with trading down, especially if you're in the late top 10 or the early teens, trading down, gathering more picks, and building your team that way?
I think that I mean, generally I mean trading down is more preferable in my eyes than trading up because I mean it just like it just gives you more quantity. It gives you more shots at it, right? And so like I'm kind of a frame of mind where it's like, okay, if you're the Jets, right? And this was a draft where people were eager to trade up, then you're definitely trading at least one of those top 10 picks. With the way that it's situated, right? I don't know if they're going to be able to do that because I don't know if there's enough, top flight talent where people are going to be like, oh yeah, no,
They want to come up for,
I
yeah, they
need
want
to
to
get
come
a
up.
guy there. They might just be like, oh, whatever, man, we'll just wait. But I feel like generally, like if this was a hot draft with a bunch of quarterbacks, oh yeah, trade out of number 4 or trade out of number 10, whatever, right? If you don't need a quarterback yourself, and so
Is
I
this draft as weak at the quarterback position as people seem to think it is? I mean, you're looking at guys like Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ritter. Like none of those names jump off the page. And just as a side note, one of the guys we were just talking about, Sauce Gardner, Nolan actually joins on YouTube and says, "I don't think Gardner should be a pick at 4. He's way overrated." Well, the Jets aren't trading down, and they need a corner, so there aren't. It's not exactly like there's 10 corners that are going to be
yeah,
available here that early. If they're going corner, Gardner's the guy. I
yes.
haven't seen the pick come in just yet, but Nolan might have a point there. But as far as quarterbacks go, it's very strange to see absolutely no talk about a quarterback going number 1 or number 2 or
Yep,
number 3,
not at all.
and maybe not even in the top 10 at this point. So, is it really as weak of a quarterback class as it seems, or are some of these guys going to turn into something and they just maybe weren't the big names that you've been seeing in years past?
I mean, I think it's a little different because different compared to 2017, where it was the Trubisky, Mahomes and Watson top 3, right? I feel like it's a little bit different. Where people were talking about that draft being kind of, weak and scattershot or whatever, like, yeah, Trubisky, might be the top pick or the number 2 pick, and we'll, see from there. And then everybody else was like, yeah, Watson's not really that good, or like Mahomes is a wild card. Let's see about this pick real fast.
It appears it was Gardner. So Nolan's not thrilled for the Jets, and Nolan also says all the quarterbacks are so bad. So
Yeah. I mean, well, here's the thing. I don't know. Okay. I would say this. Right now, I don't really like that many of the quarterbacks. I like Malik Willis's potential, and I feel like there's definitely something there where like I don't know if he'll be a top 10 quarterback, but he has the potential, he has the arm, he has the raw playmaking ability to do it. And I think that's gonna help him, like kind of carry him, a little bit while he learns the game, right? Because he's got a lot to learn. It's gonna be a big competition jump for him. So I would not want to see him starting week 1, for instance. I don't see that being a good thing for him, as well as the team that picks him. But I don't know when it comes to like Kenny Pickett, right? Um, I feel like the hand thing is overblown a little bit. Now, there is something to it in that he fumbled a lot in college, and having small hands is, something where yeah, you might fumble a lot just because you cannot just hold the ball that well. You got to
but
hold
he's
you
also
have,
but he's also a guy that moves out of the pocket a lot, which increases his chances of fumbling
and yes. Yeah.
tenfold.
Yeah, and so you absolutely have to have the ball security, and if you don't, like, yeah, the turnovers are gonna be a big problem for him. As far as, like, just throwing the ball, though, I don't know that it worries me as much. I feel like he might be getting some of the worst rap, and that he might actually end up being, potentially, like, the first guy to really contribute, potentially. Um, Ritter, I'm not gonna lie to you, I did not like Desmond Ritter. Um, I, I didn't like him the first time I saw him. I will say that when he gets it right, and so much of it I think is tied to his footwork. Um, when he gets his footwork right, he can look real good. Like I'm not kidding. Like he can look real good, real NFL throws, and he obviously has a lot of athleticism and just kind of pure playmaking. He can get out of the pocket, and he can run, and all that. And he has the capability to make real ass NFL throws for sure. But so often you would just be like, you see a miss of his, and you're just like, dude, that was not even close. He could not hit. Alec Pierce would be running. He'd have like 3 steps on a defender, easy touchdown, walk in, and Ritter couldn't hit him in stride, and it'd be a contested catch where he had to slow down for it, and he's getting tackled at the 5. And it's just like, dude, come on, that's a layup. That is a layup. You
All
got
right,
to.
let me ask you one more quarterback question, and we'll move on from quarterbacks until we find a team that actually might need one in the first round here. If you had to choose between, and these guys are a little further down the list, and as Nolan said, a terrible quarterback class. If you had to choose between Matt Corral and Sam Howell, who are you choosing between?
Man, I'm not even gonna lie. I don't care about neither one of those dudes.
By the way, the pick is in for the Giants. We'll be waiting on that one.
I
They need a lot of help outside linebacker, wide receiver. The best fit might be, a guy like, you know what the funny thing is. I look at they need offensive line, they need edge help, they need everything. Um, Evan Neal. You mentioned Ekem. What is it? Equanu.
Iquanu, I think.
Aquanu. I said it earlier, and I second guessed myself because I've said his name 15 times before. But guys like Evan Neal, they need tackles. They need maybe a guy like Garrett Wilson at wideouts. A guy who's actually been moving off draft boards that I've seen. A little more local for you and I. Well, formerly for you, but more so for me. Kyle Hamilton, safety from
Yeah.
Notre Dame, has been moving up draft boards as well. So we'll have to see what the Giants shoot for here. Obviously, they're not trading this pick away because that pick is in. If you had to pick right before they do here, what do you think it goes?
I feel like it should be Thibodeau because I feel like he's clearly the best player left, and I don't know that any of the none of those tackles are better players than him, and he can absolutely be an elite force on their defensive front. So that would be probably what I would do. And I'll say this, man, like they didn't pick up Daniel Jones option. And yeah, they do need offensive line help, but they didn't pick up his option. I think that they are in limbo in as far as the quarterback position. I don't know that adding anything is going to help him because I just don't think he's very good. So if I'm the Giants, and keep in mind too that they are also going to have, I believe they've got another pick, right? So
They do in the top 10, yes.
yeah. So I would just take Thibodeau here, and you'll get another shot at a tackle later. You'll have your pick of the litter, but just take Thibodeau now and get your tackle in a couple
Yeah, but
picks.
Kyrie, come on. You know this after watching Chicago Bears football for your entire life. It doesn't matter what quarterback you have. If the offensive line is garbage, I don't care how good or bad or indifferent they are, they're not going to get anything done. So, yeah, I mean, even if Daniel Jones is mediocre, he's going to be exponentially worse simply because the offensive line can't protect him. He
Yeah.
has no time. He has no way to even look like. But then again,
But they're picking again in 2 picks. They're gonna have a shot at the tackle. I'm saying
understandable.
I'm saying I'm
Understandable. I'm just saying you're looking at it like, well, it's not as important. Offensive line not as important
no, no,
because
no, no,
who
no,
knows
no.
if Daniel
I didn't
Jones is
say
even the
that. I,
guy.
I said I said they're not better players than Thibodeau. And so
Sure.
I would say pick the better player right now and then get your tackle in 2 picks. That's what I'm saying.
So let me ask you this then: if they go with a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau, or if they go with a guy like Garrett Wilson, do they automatically go offensive tackle with their next pick, or do they swap out those guys? And to your point, that pick is in, the selection is made. It is Kayvon Thibodeau for the New York Giants with the number 5 pick. So now my question becomes, do you still go offensive line? Or, as we talked about, do you try and trade back and maybe get a couple extra picks and look for multiple offensive line players? Or do you stick with a guy like Garrett Wilson at wideout and actually give you know what my answer is going to be, because
I
I don't believe in getting wide receivers before you get protection for the quarterback, because it doesn't matter who you have running the routes if he can't get them the ball.
I mean, and I mean, the reason for me here, like, okay, that worked out for so people might bring up the Bengals. That worked out for the Bengals last year, and everybody killed them for taking Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell, and they went to a Super Bowl. Now, of course, their offensive line wasn't good, and it hurt them in the Super Bowl.
Yes.
But if you think about it, right, they have a guy now at wide receiver who is one of the he was easily the best young receiver in the league. He's literally one of the best receivers in the league now, right? And that guy is they are absolutely going to keep both of those guys around for hopefully a decade, right? Because that is the kind of player that they've got in Jamar Chase. But the thing is, none of those receivers, I mean, this receiver class has gotten a lot of hype. None of those top receivers are Jamar Chase. So no, I am not. I'm not doing Garrett Wilson.
But let me ask you this. If you end up shortening Joe Burrow's career because you don't put an offensive line around him, it's not going to matter that you have Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, because you won't have one of them. You won't have Joe Burrow.
Yeah, sure. But
you'll have
what they did immediately in free agency was get a couple of dependable offensive line players. Now, are like it's not
True.
necessarily the best, right? But yeah, they're totally going to get.
Is it better than what they were?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, like for example, they snapped up Ted Karras. Ted Karras has been a dependable starter for the last 3 years. One of the most reliable guards in the game. Sure. and very unsung. And so that is absolutely an upgrade. Now, yes, do they need, much better tackles? Yes. Like they absolutely, but here's the thing. It's not, I feel like it gets talked about like as a zero-sum game here, where it's like, oh yeah, if they pick a receiver, then that means they said screw you to the offensive line. It's like not necessarily, and I mean, I guess again, here's the thing, right?
No, but do you find yourself chasing later because you get to a point where you had a pick, you needed something specific, you skipped it to kind of tweak what you were doing?
To get elite talent. Now that's the thing. Penei Sewell might be awesome, right? And who knows? Like in time, like maybe they might look at it and be like, yeah, Penei Sewell had a better career than Jamar Chase. But look, man, like especially when you think about what these receivers are getting paid in free agency now, right? The Bengals were kind of ahead of the curve with this,
right?
And again, Jamar Chase was so good. And him and Joe Burrow were so good together, and that receiving core that, yeah, the offensive line did not get it done, but they made it to a Super Bowl, man. And so they are going to address offensive line. At the same time, I think it's completely understandable that they looked at Jamar Chase and like, look, man, this guy was, him and our quarterback had special chemistry when they were together in college. It just makes sense to bring them together. Now, again, though, if we want to bring this back to the Giants in a pick or two, none of those guys deserve that kind of treatment. If they took Garrett Wilson over one of those offensive tackles, that's a fireable offense. That is an absolutely fireable offense. I do not want to see Garrett Wilson getting picked before Evan Neal or Ekwonu, or Charles Cross. I don't want to see that.
Khari, all I have to say is
don't do that.
A wise man once said, you get yourself into trouble if you're not sticking with our philosophy of best player available. When you start trying to manufacture things or create things, that's when teams get into dangerous water. That person then traded away 3 picks to move up to number 2 to select Mitchell Trubisky. And that person is Ryan Pace, and he no longer has a job. So all I'm saying is the guy who a day before the draft said you get yourself into trouble if you're not taking the best player available, and then traded away a bunch of picks to move up and take the guy who was not the best player available.
How do you and you look at it in hindsight, but I feel like not even at
We
in
didn't look at it in
hindsight.
hindsight. We looked
You
at
you
it at
could
the
you could look
time.
at it right now. How do you come away with watching those guys play in college even
I know where you're
and
going with
think that
this.
Mitchell Trubisky was a better player than Deshaun Watson? And you know what? I'm not even gonna talk about all the rest of the stuff that Deshaun Watson is doing on the side, that maybe makes it look
Right.
like, okay, maybe
No,
we
that has
dodged a
nothing to
bullet with
do.
that.
That
You know
was
what?
not at the time. That had
I'm
nothing to
literally
do with
just
that
talking
draft.
about how do you look at those two play football and get the idea that Mitchell Trubisky was a better player, that he had more upside.
It was that Toyota Camry, salt of the earth. Um, although, I mean, my
All
aw
shucks,
shucks,
you
yeah.
know, like
You
I
know who he was. You know who he was. Ryan Pace thought he was the next Drew Brees. That's all he saw him as. And we had an entire
insane,
conversation about
insane.
trying to find the next whoever. Like, stop trying to find the next because you're not going to find the next. Everybody's different.
And
You find the next franchise quarterback for the Chicago Bears. Don't
and
find the next Drew Brees.
and this is what people are talking about right now, finding the next Debo Samuel. Why? Well,
Right.
it's like, yeah, copycat league or whatever. But look, man, like Debo Samuel is a unique player, and yet you want to find the next Debo Samuel. Debo Samuel doesn't want to be that Debo Samuel no more. He's trying to get out
He's
of
trying
that
to get out.
situation because he wants to have a longer football career, and he
And
got his
guess what?
ass kicked
And guess what?
playing running back.
Tyreek Hill's out too. He's not even where he was. So all these guys are moving around, and these teams are still going to try and find the next person that they just moved on.
Yeah, but I'll say this though, like that part's not the issue so much as like, yeah, we want to find the next Debo Samuel where we can line him up in the backfield and hand him the
Right.
ball a bunch of times, or like use him as a gadget player, like
Well, before that, it was Cordell Patterson. Cordero Patterson.
and watch that guy piece out in 4 years
Right.
or demand a trade because he wants to play for a team that will actually use him the way he wants to be used.
Or at
And
least the way that the Bears tried to use Cordero Patterson with just made less than 0 cents. There's we can hand him the ball. You know what? It really reminded me of completely different players, completely different size, all that kind of stuff. But it reminded me of the way the Bears tried to use Devin Hester years ago because they just wanted to get the ball in his hands. So they were like, well, we'll line him up as a slot receiver. He's our number one receiver now. We're going to hand him the ball in the backfield. We have to get the ball in his hands. When you start overdoing what one person is good at. So one person is great at these specialties. They're great at these particular positions. And then you're like, well, let's make him 6 other things. He now not only is he bad at the other things, but he becomes worse at the thing he was special at because he's not focused on that anymore. That stuff just drives me nuts.
I mean, and that's the case for some players. I think that there are some players like Debo Samuel who can do it all.
Yeah, but
But
Debo Samuel is already doing that. I'm talking about guys who are specialty
yeah,
players.
and so it's like Devin Hester was a guy who, like, even in college, they didn't entirely know what to do with him. They give him
Right.
the ball every once in a while. They were trying to make him a corner, right? But in the
Yep.
end, what he was a really good return guy.
He was an elite returner. He was a Hall of Fame returner. Ikem Ekwonu.
Yeah,
No,
first tackle off the board. There we go.
yep. So they did exactly what you said. You were going, and now here's the other key. Now the Giants need a tackle as well. So is it as simple as going with someone like Charles Cross, Evan Neal, one of those
I think it
guys?
should be. Yeah.
Because Ekwonu went directly ahead of their second pick now?
I think it should be. I mean, now the thing is, like, we don't know what the grades are for these guys, and how they value, um like, is it as simple as like, well, we really like all these three tackles, so if one goes, like, we'll just take the other one. Look, I think that I feel like the Evan Neal stuff, like, where people are like talking about, like, yeah, he might be more of a guard, or something, and I'm just kind of like, where did that come from? um so I mean, maybe so, I don't know, but I personally think like Evan Neal was being talked about as the number one pick, and for quite a while. And I think getting him here would be a steal. I also think that Charles Cross is another guy that has gotten just he's risen up pretty hard.
Hmm.
He had a very good combine, and so I would look at him as a possibility here. So I can't tell you which one it's going to be, but I feel like yeah, I would just go tackle here because once again, you could get a receiver at this point if you want. Um, I mean, every last one of them is available to you, but I just don't want one of them at number 7. I'm sorry. I don't see it. Don't think it's a good idea. And again, if you're looking at positions here, right? The so if you're looking at positions, you're not taking a safety, right? Your top two corners are gone. You could look at a receiver here, but honestly, I just don't think any of them are good enough. So I feel like it's just got to be offensive line, right? And you could look at it like, yeah, the Giants are thinking about trading away, Kadarius Toney, and they haven't gotten what they want. Kenny Galladay, they signed him and he didn't play, right? And so like maybe they want some insurance, but again, I think it's not a premium position to the point where you take it over offensive line.
Hmm.
And again, if you're worried about receivers, like, and you pick in the second round, you're gonna have so many more like good receivers that you could take on day 2.
Right.
And I'm gonna keep harping on this. It probably won't be the first time I do this. You are almost as likely statistically. And the Athletic did a big study on this. You're almost as likely in terms of percentages to draft a Pro Bowl or All Pro wide receiver on days 2 and 3 of the draft as you are drafting one in round 1. And I mean the percentage of guys in round 1 is a lot because there's so many receivers
Right.
that go in round 1. So it's like okay, yeah, the hit rate, but like kind of gets driven up artificially, but the rates are so much better when you look at the guys that get pushed down into round 2 because oh well, they didn't really run NFL routes in college, or we don't really know what kind of what the way we want to use them. Good players slipped around too. So take a receiver then.
The pick is in here for New York. We're waiting on their second pick of the first round. Nolan jumps in again on YouTube saying he thinks you should be careful with Cross. Not sure if he's a true left tackle. Played in Mike Leach's passing only offense where they get rid of the ball in 2 seconds. Can he actually block? So Nolan not sold on Cross, at least not this early in the draft, which is fine.
Yeah,
Even if they
that's fine.
do decide to go offensive tackle or offensive line in general, there are other options for them, even this early.
But yeah,
So
I think this is a good spot for Evan Neal.
you're thinking Evan Neal here, okay? If they take, what do you think happens if they take Garrett Wilson? You said it's a fireable offense. Do you think they make it out of the draft room?
It'd be brutal. I mean, yeah, of course, right? They would make it out of the draft room, and
Right.
and, and again, but
They'd get about halfway through the season, you think?
I mean, they're new. They're new in town, right? So it's Joe Shane, taking over. And I've heard so many good things about Joe Shane. I wouldn't want to have my opinion of him ruined by him taking Garrett Wilson right now.
It's okay. He's his job is safe for at least another hour. As Evan Neal is I just Evan Neal is the 7th player off the board. Pick number 7, the Giants with their second first round pick. So they've taken
Joe
Thibodeau
Shane, smart man,
and
smart
Evan
man.
Neal. So they now have a defensive end and a tackle. So they've addressed the end of both of their lines. As far as the first round goes, having 2 picks in the top 10, is this a win for the Giants?
Yeah, I think they did it exactly right. They got. I mean, we'll see if Evan Neal is an elite player. I mean, but I think he was the better tackle that's available here. And I mean, again, in the end, you don't even need incredible tackle play, right? I mean, like I think he can be solid at the NFL level. He's got the size and the movement ability to get it done. And then when you look at the Thibodeau pick again, like that right there, that is a potential that's a star. That's a star, right? So you've given yourself better tackle play here. You know, if Neal is even adequate, that's a win. And you got a guy who could be better than who I think is better than either one of the edge guys that they took before him. So yes, to me, that's a win.
The Falcons are on the clock with about 5.5 left. So I'm going to ask this ridiculous question, even though I think I know the answer to it. The Falcons need some help on offense in general, wide receiver, probably a running back. They need a little help on defense, maybe a linebacker, but they also need a quarterback. And we know that teams tend to reach for quarterbacks, even when the consensus is maybe these guys aren't so great. Is this a possibility for the first quarterback off the board this early? And I say this early after saying earlier, we might not get one in the top 10, which is strange for an NFL draft. But are we looking at pick 8 here as the possibility for the first quarterback off the board?
I think pick 8 and pick 9, the Seattle Seahawks at number 9 are possibilities for in particular, talking about first quarterback off the board, Malik Willis, because I just don't know that I don't know that either of the other, main guys that are being talked about as potential top 20 picks, Kenny Pickett maybe, or like Desmond Ritter. I don't know that I see that. So I think that we are starting to get into Malik Willis territory. I will say that, you know, yes, like the competition's a big jump for him, but teams apparently just love interviewing that kid. Like just rave interviews about him, rave interviews about the way, or, rave reviews about the way that he thinks about the game and the way that he has digested people's playbooks and play concepts. When they interviewed him, apparently they were blown away. Which, I mean, I have my feelings about that. Like, oh, you were surprised uh, that the running back was good at memorizing the plays. Is that what we're saying here?
Right.
I mean, because that's the chatter, right? And it's like he's not even a quarterback; he's a running back, and literally everything I said about Lamar Jackson. Which don't I'm gonna try not to do this. I'm trying not to.
So I brought receipts on Facebook because when Lamar Jackson was drafted, I said, I did the old this might be a hot take, but I think that Lamar Jackson's going to be a top 2 or 3 quarterback in this draft. I know people don't think he was going to be. Well, maybe he's going to be a wide receiver or anything. And I said I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but hey, I got one right. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
I mean, check, please. Get me out of here.
Yeah.
Kyrie, you take over. I'm in the bag.
So
So go ahead.
I think the other thing that we might be in for a surprise on, maybe it's not a quarterback here. Maybe it's Jamison Williams. Because here's what I'm gonna say about this, right? So we've been talking about Garrett Wilson and
Because he's an Alabama wide receiver, and Alabama wide receivers
no,
always end up getting picked high.
but it's mostly because, like, yeah, he might not play for half the season. He might not play the season at all. You never know. But I mean, apparently his rehab is going well. But look, if Jamison Williams doesn't get hurt, we're not even talking about those other dudes to me as being the number one.
He's by far the number 1 receiver off the board. No
I
question.
mean, his speed is nuclear. Like, I mean, you watch this dude just like his accelerate. It's not even just the raw speed, right? Like the fact that he just like runs by you or whatever. The long speed. It's literally the fact like he just goes 0 to 60 in a way that's unfair. So I think if you want to get wild here, maybe you do it.
Well, it's neither of those. And it is not Garrett Wilson either, but it is a wide
Drake London.
receiver.
Okay.
Drake London from USC comes off the board
Okay.
to the Falcons at pick number 8, which
Okay.
means the Seahawks are on the clock. And we can always go back to what do the Seahawks need? They need a quarterback. Could Pickett come off the board here? I could Willis come off the board here. I want to go back to what fits best for the Seahawks. Would it be a guy like Malik Willis? Because we're talking about we're talking. I don't want to say we're splitting hairs because they're two completely different players, but we are talking about similar skill sets in the sense of
in a way.
you know what I'm talking about. And so
They
my
both like to
question is,
extend plays and they'll run around. Yeah.
yes, yeah, as far as more of like the hey, this play's broken, I'm going to make it work, kind of a thing. If you're looking at a guy like Malik Willis or you're looking at a guy like Kenny Pickett, does one or the other fit with the Seahawks better than the other?
In the grand scheme of things, don't think so. I feel because well, here's what I'm gonna say, right? So when it comes to Pete Carroll, he likes to run the football. So that's actually, I mean, that works, right? For both of them, in that way. Like they're not going to be necessarily counted on to throw the ball 50 times a game, right?
Right.
The running game in theory is going to help them out. They're going to rely on it and use it a lot. So I mean that would be a plus for them. I would say that would be potentially a good fit for either. I feel like I would especially like it for Willis because his arm is tremendous, and you get a guy who can throw like he can off of play action. You run, you run, you run, you run, and then you open up deep shots off of play action. Like that is Malik Willis's wheelhouse. Slinging the ball. And, the weather is not always wonderful in Seattle. Sometimes it gets a little wet up there, kind of being on the coast. And if you're looking at somebody who's like maybe be able to throw in some weird conditions, then I'm going with Malik Willis over Kenny Pickett. Not to say that, and again, I do want to put this out there. Kenny Pickett played at Pitt. It's not always nice over there either. It gets cold, and it gets crappy. So I mean, like, yes, he's proven he can throw in adverse conditions or less than ideal conditions. He wears those gloves that kind of help him out.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I like Malik Willis as a better fit there. Now it could be that Pete Carroll looks at this and is like, you know what, give me Cross here because I want to run the ball, right? And like I want to just road grade it and go from there. So that would probably be my top two thoughts because they definitely don't need receivers right now. DK's still there, Tyler Lockett's still there. So I'm definitely looking for either quarterback or offensive line, most likely.
Quarterback or offensive line, most likely. Well, we know Nolan thinks that Cross is not worth it at that point, or at least at this early in the draft. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can do so on Facebook. You can do so on YouTube. You can do so on Twitch and Twitter. Across the board, join the conversation with myself and Kyrie. We are talking 2022 NFL Draft live as it happens. This is live NFL Draft coverage with V and Ree from the Weekend Wake Up. Kind of off topic, the Seahawks are still on the clock with about 4 minutes left, just under 4 minutes left. Kind of off topic, more local for me, formerly for you. The Bears hold no 2022 first round pick. Obviously, they traded up last year to get, we go back to their guy in Justin Fields. Their first actual pick in this draft is in the second round, the 39th overall. They do have 3 picks total on day 2 with 2 second-round picks and a third-round pick. If you're the Bears, I personally don't see them trading back up into the first round. I see them just riding it out, taking what they have. If you're the Bears, do you trade one of your second-round picks to acquire more picks, seeing as you ended up as what were they, 6-11 last year, seeing as you were just not a very good football team across the board, you then traded away Khalil Mack, so you have another hole to fill. You're just missing some guys in there, and we saw what kind of deficiencies this team had. Do you acquire more picks if you're the Bears, knowing you have a lot of these holes to fill?
I think you 1,000% trade one of those second round picks, possibly both of them, possibly trade back twice. And here's why. I know, like, it's just kind of like, yeah, but what if you miss out on certain good players? I think that the general consensus about this draft is that day 2 and 3 is a place where a lot of starter caliber players are going to be. Both at the top of it, I mean, they could probably get a faller at 39 if they want. At the same time, I think that with the number of teams that are looking to move back and acquire more picks, if they can actually get a deal to do it, I think you take the deal and you move down and you scoop up another second or another third, right? Or even a fourth because you don't got a fourth. So I think that that would be a solid move. And I would consider doing it twice because some of the players that are, and there's inevitably going to be some first round caliber players that make it into day two and get pushed down further than we think they're going to. And as they get pushed down, other guys are also potentially that you want might also get pushed down a little bit further too. So I think that it is absolutely in their best interest to trade back. I think that if there is somebody that falls out of the first round that you think is like, oh wow, okay, the value's just too good, we got to take this guy, I think that you probably stick there. But again, it's about the deal. It's about the deal that
Right.
you get
If
to
he
move up.
gets to you at 39, you take it. I
Yeah.
don't see much more trading up, even though you have 2 second-round picks.
Yeah,
You're talking
and
about a
no,
team that
to me, this is absolutely not the time to trade up. There,
correct.
I just don't see anybody worth doing it for. Like,
You
there's
you
nobody worth
essentially you
trading
have
up
6
for.
picks. You have 6 picks. You have 2 twos, a 3, 2 fives, and a 6. You're competing against a team, and I'm not one to be like, "Well, what's this other team doing?" But you can't beat the Packers, okay? In your division, you just can't beat them. They are the better team, and they are the better team because of Aaron Rodgers. No matter who they put on that roster, Aaron Rodgers tends to carry them to a few wins by himself. But even the Packers, who have become weakened in the offseason by losing some important players, have 11 draft picks in this draft. They almost have twice the number of draft picks you have, which, even if we go back to saying, well, you hit 50% of the time, that gives them twice the amount of chance to
Yeah,
hit some of
more
those
darts,
players.
more
They
darts to
may
throw
hit
short.
6 players and you only have 6 picks.
Yep.
So if you're the Bears, you you come in with a new GM, you have a new head coach, you have just basically an entirely new front office, and they're behind the 8 ball because of what happened with the previous front office. But yeah, I mean, I think all day you look at trading down, getting getting more
Charles
draft
Cross.
capital, and yes, to your point, the Seahawks just picked offensive tackle Charles Cross. So
Yep. So
they
they
went the
so they went.
direction of we don't have a quarterback, but we need someone to protect him anyway. So whoever we have.
Yeah,
Um,
they said, like they've got Drew Lock, and obviously, like, I don't, they don't really believe in Drew Lock. I don't think so, right? At the same time, it's like, you know what? Let's go ahead and get this guy, get an offensive lineman that we like right now. And again, like, we're gonna road grade it a little bit, yeah, and just and run the football. And yes, we'll also see what he can do in protecting um, you know Drew Lock or whomever they end up getting, because
right.
I don't buy it that they're really going to start Drew Lock. I mean, they might, we'll see. But, again, I think that that's a perfectly reasonable pick because and I think it's also telling us a little bit about, I feel like if it was going to be a quarterback like that was going to go in the top 10, it was going to be, I mean, well, it's not like you can go any more chances than that because it's the ninth pick. But I feel like if there was going to be a quarterback go before like the mid teens or 20s, that was it. So I
Yep.
think that tells you what people think about what people think about the quarterback class. Malik Willis is not going to sneak up in there. So we'll see what happens. Those quarterbacks going to get pushed down. It would be nice to see one of them or more than one sneak into the mid-teens, because then that means some interesting players are going to get pushed down both to the New England Patriots, whom I cover, and later on to the Bears. So we'll see what happens, but I think there's a perfectly reasonable pick.
By the way, you are watching the Weekend Wake Up, or the variation of the Weekend Wake Up, 2022 NFL Draft coverage with V. I'm Vito Abenanti, and That is Kyrie Thompson. I do want to say on air, congratulations to Kyrie Thompson, who is now working for WEEI. Are you officially the Patriots beat reporter? Is that what it is, or are you
Yeah,
just reporting directly on the Patriots?
I will be, yeah, I guess I will be a Patriots beat reporter of sorts. So it'll be a bit more of an on-air role than what I've done in the past. Hopefully, I won't be sounding quite like this. I'll have a little bit more juice to the voice once I can get away from this, whatever the hell this is that's going on with my throat. But yeah, so I'll be on air a little bit more, doing radio reports from the stadium. Obviously, I'll still be doing some writing on the side. Hopping on with the EEI shows on air on occasion, and doing some fill-in hosting. I'm actually going to get my first run at that on Saturday morning, from 9 to noon Eastern time out here. So set your dials to weei.com to hang out with me and Rob Bradford all morning. We're going to talk a
There you
lot
go.
of draft.
Plug it
We're,
up. Plug it
yes,
up. Damn it.
we're
What
going to
else
go.
is this time
Um,
for?
yeah, no,
You can also follow Kyrie on Twitter at KD Thompson 5. You can follow him on Facebook. Just search for his name, Kyrie Thompson. The Jets are back on the clock. The pick is in. So they went Sauce, excuse me, they went Sauce Gardner with their first pick of the first round.
KD Thompson
They
5.
also likely need a wide receiver and maybe a defensive end. So if you're looking at this from the Jets' perspective now with their second pick of the first round, do you go with something or someone like a Garrett Wilson who has now dropped to you at the 10th pick? What do you do as far as maybe a guy like Jermaine Johnson, defensive end from Florida State, is still available? What if you're the Jets and you're thinking to yourself, all right, we got our corner, we got our guy. Which direction are you going here?
So I think this is an opportunity for a receiver to come off the board to help Zach Wilson, because I think, again, they, I mean, so what we saw last year, right, was that you had a bunch of teams be like, look, we are going to get a receiver for our young quarterback to bond with and to grow with. And Zach Wilson, I mean, for all his struggles, I mean, he showed at times that he had a little bit of something. He just didn't really have a lot of great players to throw to. I mean,
Mhm.
Elijah Moore, they took him last year. And they had Corey Davis, but again, that's not those aren't number one receivers.
Right.
So I think it would be interesting to see if they do that here.
Let's see. We are
Garrett
looking.
Wilson.
It's selection made. Garrett Wilson. So there
Garrett
you go.
Wilson.
Came up right as you were finishing. They have now got their wide receiver. So they've got a corner. They've got a wide receiver. Interesting to see here that both teams that had two picks in the top 10, the Giants and the Jets, kept both of those picks. Do you think that is more indicative of something that you mentioned earlier? There aren't a lot of elite guys that people just want to move up for, or was it a situation where the need was there to try and get these guys for the Giants and Jets because of the holes they needed to fill? Having two first round picks made more sense to them because they felt these guys were elite, or at least elite in the sense that they were positions they needed and they had them graded high enough to stay in those spots.
Honestly, my guess is that it's more of the former, that they couldn't find a deal good enough to move down because, again, Garrett Wilson, nice player. Um, is he really a kind of guy that should go number 11 overall? I mean, like, I'm not sure. I mean, it's fine. I think it's reasonable, right? But I feel like I don't know that that you look at this and you're just like, oh yeah, like if they didn't have a deal that would allow them to move down and pick up more picks that they liked better, that they wouldn't have just been like, yeah, I'll do that instead of taking Garrett Wilson. I mean, maybe
Mhm.
they really like him that much. Maybe. Um, I mean, again, I think that it's
Doesn't sound like you're
sensible to
sold on that.
no, not entirely. I think it's Yeah, to me, to me, it's like, is he really the 10th pick overall? Like, I just don't see that. I kind of felt that way last year when I saw, and again, these are good players, but when I saw Patrick Surtain and J.C. Horn going like 7 and 8, again, I'm looking at it like those are teams that should have picked a quarterback, and the fact that they didn't was, frankly, a bit mystifying to me. And I mean, I'm not saying that not saying the Jets should have picked a quarterback there, right? But
Right.
it's just kind of like yeah, like we need a corner, and like we couldn't do anything else with this pick, so let's go ahead and just take one. Um, so my it's a roundabout way of saying, and we have a trade. We have a trade right now. New Orleans has just jumped up to number 11 overall. Vito, first
So,
thoughts on seeing that? What you thinking?
well, this happened last year, and it happened from a similar position. So the Saints had these two first round picks this year, and I think the main idea was they're going to trade up. Like, this wasn't a situation where they were going to wait till 16 and then wait till 19 and utilize those two picks. It wasn't like the Jets and Giants here, where they had these two top 10 picks and they were just going to stay there. At least that's the way I saw it. So, you have to think of it in the sense that they got to 11, they saw who they wanted, and I'm going to switch it up here and we're going to put the Saints on the clock because we just saw that the Commanders traded that pick away. But if you really look at it, what do you trade up for? I mean, you don't trade up to get an offensive tackle. You don't trade up really, 5, 6 spots in the first round to get a wide receiver. Although maybe they believe Jamison Williams is the guy, and he's going to come back and they really, really need that guy. You trade up to get a quarterback.
And they traded up so 5 spots here. So I I think, yeah, my gut reaction here is that it is going to be a quarterback, and it's probably going to be Malik Willis. That's my guess. Now, if it were any non-quarterback, I would I would probably say Jamison Williams, but you probably didn't need to do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it seems like, I mean, they've already kind of decided at this point that it's going to be like, Drake London went first, Garrett Wilson went next, and so the board is playing out a little bit more the way that some of the previous mocks had gone, because Williams was kind of shooting up the draft boards again because people were like, wow, like other teams really don't care about the injuries so much. So they might take him earlier. So I think that's playing out a little bit more where Williams might slip down into the low teens. I don't think he's going to get into the 20s. I mean, if it happens, it'd be like 20, because I just don't know that he's going to get to the Patriots at 21 or anything like that. But
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, the Saints do need a wide receiver, but again, to your point, I think he made it to 16. So if Williams was the guy, you needed to wait 5 picks. I think you were going to do it. I think it was going to be perfectly fine.
interesting.
The
I just read this real quick. I saw this from. I mean, it's a check marked person, but I don't know how legit it is. That the Jets rejected a trade from the 49ers involving Deebo Samuel for the 10th overall pick and took Garrett Wilson instead, which, you know, I can I can see why you would do that, because is Deebo Samuel a better player? Yeah,
yeah, but
but
you got to pay him.
you got to pay him.
You got to pay him. Yeah, and I mean that's one of those things. Is trading away the 10th pick worth having to pay a guy, tens of millions of dollars?
Right.
Who knows? They might not think they still have their quarterback yet. So, maybe they'll pair, Garrett Wilson up with a younger guy. You know what the confusing thing to me was? The Saints made this trade, right? And now the pick is in, and that's perfectly fine, but they let 5 minutes run off the clock before they put this pick in. It's a bit confusing to me if you're going to trade up 5 spots in the first round to go get your guy, quote unquote,
It's like,
and la
why isn't it the pick is in right away,
yeah,
right?
that's a bit confusing to me. I mean, maybe it was a maybe they just, the NFL took their time, but
It's
that seems
possible.
like one of those things where it's like, well, when you're announcing the trade, you're handing the card in. Like, here's what we're doing. We're moving to 11. Here's our picks. So,
Yeah. And to me, that's typically how that works. I mean,
right.
maybe it was just another round of like, hey, we all good with this, like, and maybe getting in touch and you're doing the whole thing. Like maybe that was it, and like it's still like on lock behind the
Yeah.
scenes, but the card just didn't get turned in or whatever. But yeah,
But yeah, maybe there's nothing there, but that was just confused. That was a little
yeah.
confusing to me because while we were talking back and
Because I feel like
forth,
in the past, and to your point, when the Bears did this last year, we knew right
we
away
knew right
it
away.
was in immediately.
We were having that conversation. We're like, "Oh, the trade happened," and you started talking about what does this mean? It means they're getting Justin Fields. Like, you knew exactly what was happening, and 30 seconds later, that pick was happening. But again,
And
even
and,
here,
and I just oh man, I just remember. Oh my God, because it's number 11 right now. It's the flashbacks. Seeing the room that was completely empty, right?
right?
Like they were all out of the room. I was like, oh yeah, okay, I think it's going down. But to actually hear it happen. All right, they are coming back onto the stage. My guess is going to be Malik Wilson here. We will see. I would be a little surprised if it was like Kenny Pickett, but my guess is Malik.
All right, we'll wait for it here. You said they're coming back on stage.
That Tony Gonzalez right there. Tony Gonzalez on stage. Yeah.
Which feed are you watching?
I'm watching ESPN right now. What are you
Oh,
watching?
okay. I've got the ABC feed in,
Oh,
so
okay.
maybe
I
that's
was
why
on NFL Network and it was like terrible.
I'm a little I'm a little delayed, which is opposite of last year because last year I had the front feed and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
were you were
Right.
you were staring awkward. I had to wait to tell you everything that was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
But
got to drag this out a little longer. I mean, this guy's still up here talking about this.
yeah, you got to shake hands with Tony Gonzalez one or two
Hmm.
more times.
Yeah, 6,
Why
7,
is
8
Tony
times.
making this pick?
So, let's real quick. Upcoming picks: Vikings, Texans, Ravens, Eagles. The Eagles have 2 picks in the first round as well. They were picking directly there. They were actually picking directly in front of the Saints twice.
Hmm.
So they had 15 and 18. The Saints had 16 and 19. And I wonder if that's part of the reason here. Maybe the Saints were thinking to themselves, the Eagles still aren't really sure about Jalen Hurts. You know, you see what he can do, but it doesn't seem like, well, at least the Eagles fans, and don't get me wrong, Philadelphia Eagles fans are just the worst, but but no one seems to be bought into whether or not Jalen Hurts is the guy. And I think maybe you wonder if the Saints were thinking to themselves, well, if we're going to get our guy, this goes back to one of those things. Maybe we do have to jump ahead of the
Yeah.
Eagles. I
Yeah. No,
mean,
that's fair. Yeah.
the delay on getting this pick in is,
Insane.
making this selection. I could
No,
have
it's
taken a
funny
nap.
because it was like that with the Fields one too. It was
Yes,
brutal.
yes. I could have
I'm just
taken a
like
nap at this point, but
I'm just like tell us they got Justin Fields already. God, that's
well,
all we
it's one of
want.
those things where
All we want in
you knew, but
life. Yeah.
it's actually funny because that actually reminds me, wow, they did not go with a quarterback.
No.
So again, a bit confusing. Um, to your point, we were talking about if they were going to go wide receiver, they would likely go Jamison Williams, right? Because he was probably the consensus number one wideout. But we thought, hey,
So
if
they
you're
go
going to
Chris
move up,
Olave. See, and you know what? This is where I'm gonna go off on this little. I don't like this. I don't like this.
I don't like it either. It doesn't make sense to me.
Look, here's the thing. I really like Chris Olave. I do. He's a very good player. And I mean, his route running is exceptional. He's faster than I think I gave him credit for. I mean, obviously you see him running away from people in college, but I feel like he didn't. It almost didn't register quite as much. Like, yeah, this is a 4.3 guy, because he's so smooth, right? He's just a smooth runner. He's a smooth operator. and he's got better ball. He's got great ball skills. He's got underrated skill to like go up and get a ball, right? Even though he's not the biggest guy in the world. So yeah, no, I absolutely think that he's a good player. To me, it's just not the number 11th overall pick, man.
Yep,
He's
I
not.
completely agree.
I see him being, to be honest, like he to me, he's a very good number 2. Um, or like potentially like a 1B. I do not see him being like the best wide receiver in the league. I don't see it. Maybe I'm
I compl-
tripping, but I don't see it.
so it's interesting because if you so the Lions have the next pick. They've traded with the Vikings. It says the pick is in, and if you're watching ABC's draft coverage, it says number 12 Detroit, and then underneath it it shows the logo for the Vikings and says the pick is in. And now they just switched it to the Lions on the clock. So
So
a bit.
I am seeing. Do you want to know what I just saw?
What did you just see?
That it's Jamison Williams going
For the
next
Lions?
for the Lions.
Um, yeah, I guess it makes sense. I
It's
mean,
just
the problem is Jared Goff their quarterback? I don't know.
no. I
And
mean,
that's
most likely not. Here's the thing, right? So it's like a chicken or the egg
right. What comes first? Yep.
kind of thing. Do you get the quarterback first and then get the weapons, or do you get the weapons and then get them the quarterback that is going to make it all work? And for example, right, the Lion, I mean, the Lions and the Rams, switching their quarterbacks, right, and Matthew Stafford going to the Rams. Well, that was basically that.
Right.
They were like, okay, we believe we've got the team and the weapons and all of that. Let's go get us a quarterback. You know, and so you can see the argument for that. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? They went with Jameson. They went with Jameis Williams or Jameis Winston,
I was gonna say
Jameson Williams, and all that.
Jamison Williams and Jameis
It's
Winston.
killing me right
We're
now.
all over the map. I
Yeah,
get it.
but it's like, we've been rolling with Jameis Winston for a minute, throwing to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and they're good players. We know that. Let's go get Tom Brady. They win a Super Bowl, right? So I think that in this case, it's okay to get the superstar receiver. So,
But how do
and
you know what you have if you don't have anyone to get him the ball? Like it
well,
works.
I mean,
Works
my
for you.
argument is, what you got with
Well, but that
With Jameson, you know exactly what your ass got.
I agree. If as long as he comes back healthy from the ACL, I completely agree. But what I'm saying is, so Jared Goff is not Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is a better quarterback than Jared Goff. Now,
Sure.
he's also, in a sense, a worse quarterback than Jared Goff, but he could at least get the ball to these guys. So you knew if you had a guy who could get the ball to these guys, to the wide receivers like Evans and so on, without turning the ball over 30 times like Jameis Winston did, you knew you had those talented guys. Whereas if you're the Lions and you have Jared Goff throwing the ball to some of these wide receivers, do you actually know what you have, not only in the wide receivers, but in anybody else on that offense?
Yeah, I will say this though. Can Jared Goff hit a slant route? Because if Jared Goff can hit a slant route, that'll work. Because then
I'm
Jameson
not a Jared
Williams
Goff
can do the
hater.
rest.
I'm not a Jared Goff hater. I just don't think he's very good. Is he Mitch Trubisky? No, but they'll tell you Jared Goff went to a Super Bowl. So
Yeah, and I mean, he was great in that offense, though I think that was mostly Sean McVay and scheme,
yeah,
and then having Todd Gurley run in as well as he was back then. It was just
you called it. Jamison Williams was the pick. I don't know where you get your info, but you're spot on as always. Some blue check gave you the pick. I know.
so this guy actually wasn't a blue check, but
Oh,
he is quite the media guy, Ari Merov. But here's what I'm gonna say. That is bold. That is a very, very bold trade to move up for a receiver. I just don't Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about all that, but I'm gonna say this: Jameson Williams, damn good player. Now I've seen a bunch of people see that the Eagles have
The
traded
Eagles
up.
have now traded up with the Texans, so they must see who they want. I'm
I'm seeing a lot of people really upset that this might mean that George Pickens doesn't land with the Bears. He's not going to make it to round two. I don't know if it means all that yet. We'll have to see. But I don't know,
but
man. Like,
but
like
why but why would
who are
that?
you trading up for here? Who are you trading up for right now?
Yeah, again, confusing to me. So we've seen some trade ups, and we've seen some trade ups in confusing ways. Look, if the Lions think that Jameson Williams is their guy, fine, that's great. But the problem for the Lions is they're not a very good football team overall, and they just traded away multiple picks to move up to take a wide receiver who probably isn't going to be ready for the beginning of the season. And on top of that, their next pick isn't until the third round, early in the third round. So you're talking about a team that, again, we go back to what's the philosophy here? Do you trade up to go get that guy? I understand it. Jameson Williams might be an elite wide receiver, but you still don't have a guy to throw to him, and you still don't have a team to put around him. This isn't a Jamar Chase situation, like you mentioned, because you don't have any other pieces to go with Jamar Chase.
Now, what I'll say in particular with Williams is that there is a strong chance that he does not. Well, I mean, he's absolutely not going to play the entire season this year. He's probably going to land on the pup list, which would make him would he'd come off of that like in October or something like that. He might not touch the field until November, and there might even be a chance he like legit does not play at all. So I'm looking at this kind of like maybe this is an investment for the future entirely, to the extent that maybe they don't even care if Jared Goff ever throws him a pass in the NFL. So I think that's kind of an intriguing thought process, right? Now, and keep this in mind, just looking up some of Jared Goff's contract stuff here. The Lions could absolutely get out of Jared Goff's contract next year if they want. Like he is not safe. They could draft a quarterback this year if they really felt good enough about one, or they could wait till next year if they're bad enough to get a shot at like a CJ Stroud, right? So that could absolutely happen.
But are
Um,
they essentially punting on this season then? Because
I mean,
if
you're not gonna tell anybody that,
I
right?
know that. I know that. And you much like some of these guys who are suing the NFL for being forced to tank, I understand why you're not going to tell anybody that. But my confusion stems from, again, you need more than one player. Jameson Williams may be an elite wide receiver, but to your point, he may not even play this year, and you need more than that. So trading away draft picks seems confusing to me when there were more wide receivers that were available later in this draft where you didn't have to give up draft capital to get them.
Yeah, no, and that's 100% fair. And I think that if there was one wide receiver worth like quote unquote risking it all for, I would look at Jameson Williams as being that guy, because he just has something that like none of those other guys can duplicate in terms of playmaking skill. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who could be a Tyreek Hill esque player. Like that's the dude, right? Just an absolute game wrecker. Can't cover him, can't run with him, none of that. So he's a special player. And again, if he had not been hurt, that's a top 10 pick easily. Like we're not talking about any one of those dudes going before him. So
Well, let
that's
me
the
let me
one.
ask you this then. Along the same lines, the Eagles traded up, right? They traded up a couple picks. We've seen, I don't want to say a run on wide receivers, but we've seen a couple wide receivers in the last few picks here, and the Eagles need a wide receiver. So we've seen three straight picks of wide receivers. Are you trading up here if you're the Eagles to get Treylon Burks? Like, is this the
That
direction
would
you're
be, to
going?
me, I mean, that would be completely absurd because
I'm
Treylon
with
Burks
you.
is his stock has been fallen big time, right? So I just absolutely would not be trading up for Treylon Burks. That said, if if the Eagles do pick Treylon Burks here, I think that I would be I would like him on that team because people have, in my mind, really overthought him as a player. I don't know, like he didn't really run routes like that. I mean, it's the same things that like you have people slipping down into slipping down into the second round. It's like, look, the dude's just a good player. I think you rock with that. But then do you trade up 2 picks for that? I don't think you
Yeah,
need to do that.
that's what I'm confused.
I just
I tell you, man, this draft is getting more confusing by the minute. But we'll see what the Eagles choose as the
yeah,
pick has been in for a little bit here, but
yeah. I'm I'm
still
gonna I'm
waiting.
gonna choose to be surprised. I'm not gonna go on Twitter and look for this pick. Um, so
Just because why, really?
yeah,
I mean,
I
look,
mean,
okay, so even if they are going wide receiver, you're
I
looking
just feel
at
like
okay,
it's
so
feel
Traylon
like it's
Burks, Jahan Dotson, I don't know,
well, not I no
George Pickens, Christian
in
Watson. None of these guys are worth
in no way should Jahan Dotson be anywhere near number 13 overall.
but that's what I'm saying. None of these guys are worth moving up 2 spots. You know,
I just I mean, the next most logical pick on the big board here of players that have not gone. I mean, the best remaining player is definitely Kyle Hamilton. We haven't even talked about
yes.
him in a minute.
No, we haven't. We
We have
haven't.
not talked about
I
him in a
think
minute.
he's fallen a lot further than I thought. I thought he would go top 10.
I mean, if you think about just in terms of like his ability, the best player, probably the best player in the draft, right? At least a top 5 player in the draft at the worst. People really, again, people are overthinking that 40 time so much. And it's something that bothers me, right? Is that people are like, oh, yeah, well, he's slow. He's not slow.
Right.
Watch the film. He's not slow. Just because a guy, I'm telling you, look, football speed and track speed are 2 entirely different things. As somebody who ran football and, who played track and played football and ran track, I should say. I knew I was gonna switch him up. But, you know,
You
they're
can play
entirely
track and
they're
run
entirely
football.
different
No
things.
big
You
deal.
run differently. You absolutely run differently mechanically than how you function in short spaces and operating in football moves. And just because a guy, who, by the way, is like 6'4", 230, 40 pounds, can't unfurl themselves in a way that makes him run a 4.4.
The guy's a playmaker. That's all that matters. On
Yeah,
defense, he's a playmaker. And what do you need? You need playmakers on defense. Especially from those positions. It's not
yeah.
necessarily a defensive tackle you're just trying to clog up the line with. Um,
It's like, do you
uh,
trade up for Kyle Hamilton? I could kind of understand that, but I'm also like, what are you even doing right now?
right. Well, it's the Eagles, so I mean,
And I don't know that I would have traded up for Jermaine Johnson either, the edge guy. So I guess
I agree. I mean, the only other who else is really Jordan Davis maybe, but they don't really need an interior defensive lineman, do they?
I don't I wouldn't say so. Um at the same time, I'm kind of like Jordan Davis is awesome. um
And as I say that, the selection is made. They traded up for Jordan Davis.
they traded up
So
for Jordan Davis.
so what do I know?
So at that point it's like he's just so disruptive.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing. It's like if you're going to build up the middle for an absolute just monster. Like I can see that because that's a special player. Now I am a little bit surprised that they traded up to do that because I thought, and most projections had him going in the lower teens, or rather I should say the higher teens, I should say the higher teens. Um
Well, I mean, they only jumped one team, so was the question whether or not the Ravens, like, you had 2 options.
I
Either you
will
thought the
say,
Ravens were going to take him, or you
and I
thought
will say
someone
that,
else was going to jump you and the Ravens to get
yeah.
him.
Now I say that there's probably a solid chance, when you keep that in mind, he feels like a guy that the Ravens would totally have taken.
Sure.
So I guess
Or do they go Jermaine now they have to go Jermaine Johnson, correct? Like, if you look at it for what they need, they don't need a safety, so Kyle Hamilton's probably off.
they don't need a safety,
No, no.
but
But when a
if you're
wise
talking
man
about
once
like,
said, when
do I
you
feel
just
like
take the best available player.
and the best available player there is Kyle Hamilton,
I
right?
agree.
So I would not be opposed to the Raven. I mean, that's like DBU. They're known for churning out great safeties, especially, very good safeties and good corners generally. And they struggled a lot with injuries last year, but if they had been healthy, I think that, that secondary would have been good, and they could absolutely get even more dangerous if they got Kyle Hamilton. I am intrigued to see what they do here.
The pick is in, so we will wait for that.
I could
Best
also see,
available, the aforementioned Kyle Hamilton, Jermaine Johnson, Trent McDuffie, cornerback from Washington, and then a couple more.
yeah.
I mean, you've got one more offensive player and a guy like Trevor Penning, offensive tackle out of Northern Iowa, and then I think you get a few more defensive players, guys like Devin Lloyd, Nakobe Dean, and
So
maybe
yeah,
Daxton Hill, and a guy like Devontae Wyatt are probably your next up.
yeah.
Not including quarterbacks, because again, who's looking for a quarterback right now? Yes, you could say someone like the next team on the board, someone like the Texans might want a quarterback, but that's not that they're going with Davis Mills. So they've pretty much made that abundantly clear. Um,
So when you see the Texans and the Commanders now sitting at 15 and 16,
mhm.
there might be a shot there. And then you've got the Steelers, who have all but told you they're drafting a quarterback. So I
Even
would
if they didn't all but tell you, they signed Mitchell Trubisky, so they're drafting a quarterback.
it's cruel irony that it's cruel irony that Trubisky is going to have this done to him after having done it to Mike Glennon.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you know what the funnier part is? If you remember correctly, Mike Glennon got signed by the Bears. They drafted a quarterback. Mike Glennon then got signed by the Arizona Cardinals, and they drafted a quarterback. So I assumed that no matter where Mike Glennon went, someone was drafting a quarterback ahead of him. And Mitch Trubisky may be the next Mike Glennon in that regard, where he might earn a job everywhere he goes, but they're always going to draft a quarterback. Or he could be the next Tyrod Taylor, who somehow
Snake
everywhere he goes loses his job due to injury or the fact that they drafted a quarterback in the
freakish
first round.
injury, like, oh my god, poor guy,
Yeah,
poor guy.
that guy. I feel bad for him, but uh yeah. Poor
So
Tyrod Taylor.
yeah, so okay, I think that, I wouldn't be surprised to see, like, in the 15 or 16s, you might see a quarterback finally come off here. I think that by 20, it's happening. But I think that you bring up a good point. Trevor Penning is probably going to go within the next 5 to 6 picks.
Yep.
This is where it gets really interesting, because I feel like the Steelers basically are penciled in at quarterback, but a team like the Patriots, like, who else is going to get pushed down here to 21? And could the Patriots find a trade down in this draft? Because I feel like it was very interesting to see the way that these trades shook out, right? Most of them were like right on the cusp of the top 10 or just out of the top 10. And that kind of speaks to, I don't know, it speaks to a little bit of what people were talking about in terms of the so I spoke to Deontay Lee, who wrote a lot about the draft for The Athletic this year. And he was talking about the possibility of a lot of movement between 10 and 40 because of the quality of picks that were, kind of that were going to be there, especially like in the teens range. Though, as you saw, not as much in the top 10 itself. So I'm going to be curious to see what happens with some of these 20s, how much movement happens there.
You called the Ravens possibly going with a surprise pick here. It's Kyle
Kyle
Hamilton,
Hamilton,
best available off the
best
board
available
to the
player.
Ravens. This, to me, this opens up the Texans to take Trevor Penning because they do need tackle help. Um, they need guard help, but Trevor Penning's the best offensive lineman left, and I don't think it's close between anybody else.
I would say that I would put Zion Johnson up there, but I
Okay,
think but I think that Trevor Penning I mean, it's not that I would say that he plays a more valuable position, or at least
I
slated to play
agree.
the more valuable position, meaning Trevor Penning as a tackle. I think like Zion Johnson is just an offensive lineman. He can play wherever you want to play him. I think he's that good, but Penning is going to be the guy that goes first. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think to your point, it's a more valuable position, and if I'm being honest, I think the Texans um, need tackle help first and foremost, and then maybe immediately after that they need a guard. They are getting a little old as far as the guards they have. You do have AJ Can, Justin McCray as far as offensive guards go, but they're both coming up on 30. McCann's actually already 30. Um, but yeah, their issue is they have a bunch of young tackles, a young offensive tackles, but they don't know if any of them are any good. So really, what are you going to do there? You either need to improve somehow. These guys need to take the next step in their development, or you just need to draft someone and get rid of the guys you have. I lost your audio again, Kyrie. What happened there?
I probably muted myself because I was coughing. Um,
Okay.
but okay. Trade. The Ravens have traded Marquise Hollywood Brown to the Arizona Cardinals.
Interesting. That is a very interesting trade.
Yes, which intrigues me because now and I'd have to look at where the Ravens are going to pick again. Now the Ravens kind of have to get another receiver at some point because you got to give Lamar Jackson something. They already don't have a particularly great receiving core as it was. That said, I mean, I would be interested to see what they get out of this trade in terms of draft stuff. At the same time, I think that it's an admission that Hollywood Brown just wasn't doing what they needed to do, which is totally fair.
Right.
Um, but man, like it's tough because I want to see Lamar Jackson succeed, and he's done an excellent job of elevating a team that right now their best receiver is Mark Andrews, a tight end, and then the rest of it is, I mean, they've been plagued by injuries and guys just not quite living up the way they needed to. So
So
I want to see what they're going to do, man.
explain this one to me then, Kyrie, because you had the opportunity to either trade up or possibly take or even trade down and get another wide receiver if you knew you were going to be trading one of your quote unquote top wide receivers. You didn't necessarily need a safety, but instead you took the best available in Kyle Hamilton, and
Yeah,
then you traded away a wide receiver as well.
yeah.
Is this a situation of and to be completely honest with you, I don't know.
Kenyon
Um,
Green is the pick for the
so
Houston
they did go
Texans.
guard instead of tackle there. Kenyon
Yeah,
Green goes to the Texans. Washington, the Commanders are on the clock. So let me ask you this: I don't know. Can you see? I can't see right now what came back from
So
that.
so I actually just looked that up right now, and I think that actually it puts the Ravens in a solid spot.
Because they now have the
The
23rd
23rd
pick.
pick. So they traded Brown and the 100th pick for the 23rd pick. So not bad, not bad there. So then that puts you in Traylon Burks, Jahan Dotson territory.
Yep. But here's the question: if the teams ahead of them, um, like they made that trade relatively early. That's an early trade for the 23rd pick. And by that I mean they had just made their pick at 14
Mhm.
and they were on pick 15. So it's a bit confusing to me that they would trade for the 23rd pick 8 spots ahead of that actual pick, knowing that one of those guys that maybe they are going wide receiver, maybe both of those guys are gone at that point.
So I think there's a calculated risk here because then you look at what the teams ahead of them are looking for, and it's about how receivers are typically valued. And I think there's probably going to be a bit of a hole here in terms of wide receiver valuation because those guys, those what, four guys that all went right there, they all just like went in rapid succession. I feel like that was generally what was expected, that they were all kind of in one cloud and then the other guys were going to be in a different cloud,
Right.
right? And that there was a huge gap between the top four and everyone else, which I agree with. Um, the
Maybe
only
not all four of them going in rapid succession, but
yeah,
still
but
in
that
that
they
general area.
yeah, but that none of those guys were going to be in your range anyway. At least like not like at 23, right? So
Right.
um now at 14, I guess I had thought that there was probably going to be at least one of them left. So it was very interesting to see that run on receivers happen. That said, I think that the Ravens probably looked at it like this: like, look, I'm if everyone else is seeing the same thing that we're seeing, we're probably not going to see Jahan Dotson go in the top 20. I mean, we might, you never know, but we probably weren't going to see that. And people are down enough on Traylon Burks to now view him as a guy who goes in the 20s, or something like that, right? So it's a calculated risk. They could be wrong here. It's entirely possible that they could be wrong. That said, there's gonna be, if they want a receiver, if they want a good one, they're gonna have options here. Because say Dotson is gone or Traylon Burks is gone, there might be a little bit of a reach for somebody like a George Pickens or a Christian Watson, but those guys have a lot of upside. So you could do that if you want. And so then the thing is, at that point, it's like, okay, well, if we're gonna assume that those receivers like are probably gonna be there at 23, which I think is probably going to be a more or less correct calculation on their part, take the best player available and rock with that. Defensive cornerstone, Kyle Hamilton. He is perfect, just created for today's NFL.
Pick is in here, so obviously we just talked about Kyle Hamilton. He's off. The Commanders do need a safety, but they also need a cornerback. Would this be a good spot for a guy like Trent McDuffie from Washington for the Commanders?
I think this would be a great spot for Trent McDuffie. I think that um, out of the out of like the cloud of cornerbacks, right? So obviously you had Stingley and Gardner, right, going kind of up above there, and then I would say McDuffie is the clubhouse leader for the next cloud, which I would put in that range. McDuffie, Kyer Elam, uh, Andrew Booth Jr., and potentially Kyler Gordon. Now, I would say Booth Jr. and Gordon are more likely to be towards the back end of the first round or maybe even early second round. Um, and I mean, Elam apparently has been making some strides up draft boards. I found that very interesting. But McDuffie is, plug and play, right? He's going to come in. He's very smart. He's very technically sound. He's fast. He's tough. He tackles. He checks all the boxes. The only boxes he doesn't check are a little bit of size and length. Like that's it. But he can play any scheme you want, and he can start from day one immediately. So I think that's a pretty safe pick here. The other wild card, if you want to talk about needs on the board at linebacker and guard, or even tackle, Penning is there. Zion Johnson, if you're feeling frisky, is obviously still there. I would think that I'm intrigued that Green was the first interior offensive lineman off the board. I thought that there was a good chance Johnson could be that. But then you could also look at linebacker here and say, how am I feeling about like a Devin Lloyd? And also we still have not seen Jermaine Johnson yet.
And of course, they went off our board. Well, not necessarily off our board, but they went wide receiver, not Treylon Burks. They went Jahan Dotson. So, Kyrie, we talked about this 3 picks ago or 2 picks ago when we were saying, I don't think this is a spot for Jahan Dotson. Um, is it the spot for Jahan Dotson at pick 16 for the Commanders, who, while they needed a wide receiver, they needed help, probably more help in other areas? Do you think the Commanders saw Jahan Dotson as the quote unquote best available player? Or was this we need a wide receiver, so we're gonna reach?
I mean, again, I don't mean this as any kind of disrespect to Jahan Dotson, because I think he's a good player. He's you know he's tough. He's got good hands. And I think like he can play outside, inside, whatever you want him to do. He probably projects more as a slot guy at the NFL level because of his size. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. 16. I don't like that.
Yeah, that seemed like, I mean, look, if
No.
you were gonna get a Jahan Dotson and he was available at 23, or something along those lines, 25, 26, somewhere along those lines, I could see it. I also think this is a bit of a stretch, especially when there are, I know it's different positions, but there are better players available.
And see, and I just want to bring this up. People are talking about the New England Patriots gotta, take a round one wide receiver. And in a way, I'm glad this temptation is being somewhat removed for them, because I do not like what a majority of these teams have done with wide receivers. Like I do not like that pick. It's not a to me, it's not a good pick.
Well,
Chargers jumped right to the
I was going to say that the pick is in. They're all over it. They made their selection and they went offensive guard Zion Johnson. So a guy that you talked about might have been going to the Commanders a pick earlier, drops to the Chargers. And it seemed to me like maybe the Chargers were also thinking that Zion Johnson might have gone to the Commanders. And
yeah,
once they saw that he was still
run
available,
to the
they're like, just
run
take
the
the
card
card,
up.
just take the cards. So that's what that seemed like. That was a very quick pick. Not only was it a quick pick, but they actually made they showed the selection almost immediately, which is unheard of for this coverage.
Yeah.
Typically, it's like, yeah, they get the pick in with 8 minutes left, and they count off all 8 minutes somehow.
I
Just
mean
to
that right there is literally sprinting to the
yes,
proverbial podium.
yeah. So the Titans are now on the clock. They actually got this pick from Philadelphia. So again, Philly makes another trade. Uh, in this
Very interesting.
in this case, they're trading. Looks like they're trading back.
Yeah.
It says the Eagles are on the clock, but
It shows here that the Titans are on the
it's
clock.
the Titans. Okay, I'm just making sure here. Yeah, so they trade the pick. It looks like
God.
I'm getting the feed a little slow here, so it's not showing me what they traded for that pick. But
It's like, who the hell could they possibly want?
yeah, a bit confusing. But it looks like they traded back to 26. Let's update the old screen
Okay,
here.
so the Titans had the 26th pick.
Let's do that. All right. Sorry, updating my screens
Oh,
here.
Titans traded AJ Brown to the Eagles with this trade.
Really?
Wow.
Okay, so we've got some fun happening over here.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
That's a pretty big jump. So we're talking about
Good
they
Lord.
they went 26 to 18 and they traded away their top wide receiver.
Man.
Interesting way to go about it here. Kyrie, they needed wide receiver help to begin with. They now traded away AJ Brown. What's your take on this?
My immediate take is they know they don't want to pay AJ Brown. And I mean, I see a bunch of
Goes back to the you got to pay them, so
yeah, and
we're
I
just
mean,
not going to do that.
I'm seeing so many people talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars with the stupid ass money that they were dealing out, like just ridiculous money,
Yep.
dealing out to mediocre wide receivers. Particularly the Christian Kirk deal, like what 84 million or something like something just wild like that, right?
Well, that was
Yeah.
last year's offseason was insane for wide receivers.
And so that plus the record breaking deals for both Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams after they got traded, right? They were basically just like, we are not paying AJ Brown that. And so I think that part of the run you're seeing here is teams just being like, we got to get a damn wide receiver because we have to reload. You know,
Right.
we got to like wait for this to settle down and come back to the norm a little bit, right? Instead of, like having to justify to yourself paying AJ Brown $100 million,
Sure.
plus probably. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised to see that come for DK Metcalf too. So I think that base Debo and DK Metcalf are probably on notice right now. Like we should be watching out for potential trades for them.
I mean, yeah, you have to because what I'm seeing is just some I don't want to say dumbfounding, but some crazy trades going on today. Um, some of it a bit confusing. Some of it, I mean, I kind of get as far as the money goes, but that's huge.
Yeah, I'm just wow.
That's
I thought McDuffie would go higher. And
so
I
it appears. So did they not get the 26th pick? They just got AJ Brown in this deal. Is that what that came with?
I
As
I
far as
do not
Philadelphia goes, I
I
mean.
cannot see that yet. Um, I have not seen that.
But I guess that
And
answers our.
immediately, and what did I say? 100 million. Immediately, AJ Brown gets a 4-year, $100 million extension,
Yep.
57 million guaranteed. There it goes, right off the way.
So I mean, I guess when we look at it, that's a great first round for the Eagles because what they did is they traded up a couple spots. They got a defensive tackle, um, to solidify their defensive interior, and then they had that extra pick, that extra first round pick. They got a proven wide receiver. They didn't have to sit at 17 or 18 and take a guy who might not be worth it in Treylon Burks, teach a rookie wide receiver the ropes. They basically said, you know what? We've got this pick. We got what we wanted on defense. We're going to go out and get our wide receiver. We're going to pay him,
Yeah,
obviously, immediately.
yeah.
And
Now I think that the person you're looking at right now, obviously, is Traylon Burks in terms of
yeah,
who the Titans
I
are going to. I mean, you got to reload that, and I think that the size probably profile similarly, in terms of both height and weight. And I think that Burks is, he can get jump balls obviously, but he's a move him around kind of guy. You can get him the ball in any variety of ways. So yeah, I think that
well, let me ask
probably
you this.
he's just next in line. They're just going to keep the train moving.
Let me ask you this. Do you maybe and the pick is in, but we're still waiting for the selection to actually happen. Do you maybe take Trent McDuffie here and with your because you still have the 26th pick according to what I'm seeing. Um,
Hmm.
and maybe even if Traylon Burks is not there at 26, take a guy like Christian Watson and still get a wide receiver in the first round. And I guess that answers it for me. Traylon Burks off the board.
Well, there we
The
go.
Titans did
Yeah,
go ahead and take Traylon Burks
yeah.
with
But
that pick.
yeah, but before that pick happened, my answer was going to be like, I mean, I would have, it would have made sense in terms of taking the better player, the best player available there. Because I think that I mean, I like Traylon Burks. I mean, I think he's a very good player. I think that Trent McDuffie, right, is still the best cornerback on that board still left. Um, so I think that I don't know. For me, it makes sense because you trade away AJ Brown and it's like you gotta fill that void somewhere, because I think that they think of themselves still as potentially a playoff team. So you got to find somebody to catch the
Yeah.
ball. And you could look at him as being like, yeah, maybe this is the next Debo. I don't, again, like I said, I don't necessarily like thinking of things in that way, but he's a damn good playmaker. I think that they've got to explore his and expand his route tree. I think that's going to be the big thing. But people made a big deal about Burks's 40 time, and he wasn't as explosive as like people wanted him to be, and the route tree like needs to be developed. I think in the end, man, just get the ball in this dude's hands and let him go. Like you watch him run away from people, like he's running away from Alabama defensive backs. That boy can move.
Yeah. Nolan, watching on YouTube, this draft is drunk beyond belief.
Yes,
So he's
drugs,
um,
absolute drugs.
the Saints are back on the clock with their second first round pick. They took wide receiver the first go around. So I guess the question here is they need an offensive tackle. Trevor Penning is still on the board. Is this a value pick or is this the spot for them to fill that tackle need?
Um, I mean, I think that it's both value and need, and they probably converge here. Um, and again, to me, there's no receiver that you take here. Nobody that I would do, but then again, no, the other teams haven't cared what I thought in terms of
I
the
was going to
receivers.
say who
So
knows at this
so
point.
so so who cares what I think? But I think that this feels like a good spot for a Trevor Penning right now. And I'm actually surprised it's taken this long. And I think that if he doesn't go here, there's a good chance Trevor Penning might be a New England Patriot.
Yeah, I don't think the Steelers take him. They have more pressing needs, and he still technically isn't the best player available. I mean, he's the best offensive lineman available at
Right.
this point, but um, there are other needs for the Steelers well before they need an offensive lineman. I don't want to say well before, but
Yeah.
because everyone needs offensive linemen.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
so I
to your
yeah.
point, is that the way? Let's skip the Steelers for just a second. If he drops past the Saints, is that the direction the Patriots go? You are there in New England covering the Patriots. Do they go with a guy like a Trevor Penning? Does that fit what they're looking for in this draft?
I mean, I think offensive tackle isn't an immediate need for the Patriots, but it is a need because neither of their tackles are guaranteed to, contractually to be here, past this, next season, right? So, Isaiah Wynn will be a free agent. He's probably going to get paid and go elsewhere, assuming he can stay healthy enough to, prove that he's an adequate tackle. Trent Brown only plays about half the games. So it's like he's great when he's on the field, but not always on the field. So, yeah, you're probably going to have to replace at least one of those tackles. So I think that if there's a good one available, in particular Penning, that it's probably something that you do. It's going to be super interesting to see what they do here because the temptation to take a Zion Johnson or take one of those receivers is now off the
Right.
table. So I
And
think
you're not going to reach for Christian Watson at
no,
21.
no,
You're
no, no,
not
no,
going
no.
to reach for who Sky Moore. You're not
No.
going to reach for
What I'm going to
Pickens.
find really interesting here is what do they do? Do they go with an edge or a corner here at 21, assuming that Penning is the pick, which I think he will be
Yep.
for the Saints? Do and assuming also that Pittsburgh takes a quarterback because we don't know, they might not take a quarterback here. But I mean, it seems like it's been lining up that way. But I've been a huge fan of Devin Lloyd, but at this point, I don't know that Devin Lloyd is the value when you could take Trent McDuffie or Jermaine Johnson potentially.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're looking for best player, to your point, it's either Johnson or McDuffie. So, yeah, okay, they're all playing different positions. You're talking about end, you're talking about corner, you're talking about inside linebacker, that kind of stuff. They're all playing different positions. But if you're looking for best available, there's three guys ahead of Devin Lloyd at the very least. And in reality, it's not really. None of those are really essential for the Saints. The pick is in. It is as we thought. It is Trevor Penning. So they got a wideout in Chris Olave. They got an offensive tackle in Trevor Penning. The Saints rebuilding on offense. That means that the Steelers are on the clock. Is this the quarterback pick? Is this the first quarterback off the board in the 2022 NFL draft?
That's where my money would go. I think that it's time. Um, because again, right? Like what tackle what now that Penning is off the board, what tackle would you take here? Um,
Right.
and I mean, there are some safeties that you could start considering at this point. I feel like that could absolutely be a thing, but I feel like this is the moment where Malik, you could have your pick of the litter, and I think that I saw like a bunch of Ritter, going to the Steelers or like Pickett maybe, but again, that was all assuming that Malik Willis was going to be gone. And so I think here you get the biggest arm, highest ceiling guy at number 20. That's what I think that they would do here. Now I'm looking ahead now to the Patriots, and I think that assuming this pick to the Steelers is not going to be a cornerback, that my guess is that it's going to be McDuffie. Now, if it wasn't, I still think I could see a cornerback. I mean, I could also see edge. Like I could also see Jermaine Johnson. I don't see Devin Lloyd at this point, as much as I like him, because not a premium position, and
Right.
you have enough guys at premium positions that have fallen now to where like you take somebody there, assuming that you stay at 21. So I think that it's probably going to be McDuffie, but if it's not, maybe it's Kyer Elam, because if you're talking about cornerback profiles that are more in line with like that lockdown, like elite physical tools kind of thing, Elam is a bit closer to the Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley sort of side of things than McDuffie, who's more of a smaller, all around, kind of tackler and stuff like that. Doesn't necessarily have all the elite physical traits, but he's just a good player. That said, if you're talking about just what the Patriots value, I feel like they might value McDuffie more than they might value Elam. That's my guess. We'll
Yeah,
see.
and I mean, McDuffie seems to be more like physically, he seems to be more the cornerback mold. He's under 6 feet tall, but he still has he- he's got the speed, he's got the acceleration and so on. Whereas, uh, a guy like Kyer Elam, he is what is he 6'1", 6'2", something like
It's
that.
1.5.
So one of those guys that's he can keep up with the taller wide receivers and so on. But it's you're talking about different body types as well. Let's see. Pick is in for the Steelers. We're just waiting on 37,000 commercials to end before they can come back. And it always cracks me up. How many? Maybe you can look this up while we're talking here. How many ties do the Steelers have over the past like decade? Is it like four? I feel like they have a tie almost every other year.
Yeah, because I mean, like as Big Ben has become more and more washed, you
They
know.
they just can't finish the game. It's just not
Now,
possible for them.
now I've seen, so this is for the Patriots. One of my fellow reporters out here in Boston, Andrew Callahan, tweets, um, Jermaine Johnson, edge defender,
Mhm.
Trent McDuffie, cornerback Andrew Booth Jr., Kyer Elam, Kyler Gordon, Dax Hill, linebacker Quay Walker, and linebacker Devin Lloyd are all available. And said, I'd trade back if at all possible. I also would trade back. The problem is with that cloud of players, I feel like more likely they're going to get stuck making that pick.
Yeah, I agree. If the Steelers don't pick McDuffie, I think the Patriots, I don't want to say have to, but I think it'll be too tempting at that spot to let McDuffie pass, knowing that you do need a corner. So if he's the best player available, depending on where you have Jermaine Johnson, if one of those two guys is the best player available and you need a corner, I look, we all know Bill Belichick. He makes the smart decision. He has no problem trading down. He never has. He has no problem waiting for the player that he wants to come to him. And in this particular case, I don't know if Trent McDuffie is that player, but if he is, you can't pass on him at 21. You just take him.
Most likely. Yeah, I mean, I would think so. Given the other players that are there, you probably just do it. Though I think that again, if you like Jermaine Johnson, I'm good with that because you need pass rushing. I mean, we focus a lot on the secondary for the Patriots because they got absolutely shredded by the Bills last year, and on top of that, you also have a not great cornerback room in New England right now. So,
Yeah.
absolutely looking at somebody like a Trent McDuffie there. Um, but you also need guys that can rush the passer, and that more than anything potentially is what really ground everything to a halt for the Patriots defense last year. They were not getting to the quarterback. They were no pressure. Um, so getting pressure up front makes your cornerbacks better. So I would
All right.
understand wanting to do that.
All right. Steelers pick is in. They're about to make their selection. Final answer. Quarterback coming here?
Yeah,
All right. We shall see as they take their time announcing
they're not
Franco
going to do
Harris,
that, are they?
a 3-hour tour here.
Why do I feel like they're going to do Kenny Pickett?
You are correct, sir. They are going to do Kenny Pickett.
God,
I apologize if I preempted that, but it's Kenny Pickett. It's
I hate
100%
that.
Kenny Pickett. So let me ask you a question: Is
Oh,
Kenny Pickett going to be a rookie version of the guy they just got in the offseason in Mitchell Trubisky?
I mean, he's probably gonna. I just don't know, man. I think he could be. I think he's probably. I think he could be better than Trubisky. Like I don't know if
Well,
he's gonna
I
be.
I
I
hope
don't know
so.
if he's gonna be better than Trubisky right now, but I
I
think
know
he.
there's still some people that look at Trubisky and they're like, "Oh,
Sources: the Patriots are trading back.
it was
Look
all
at
it was
that.
all Matt Nagy's
The
fault."
Patriots are trading back. Good job, guys. Well
It was all
done.
Matt Nagy's fault that Mitchell Trubisky was hot garbage most of the time and all the rest of this stuff. But you were talking about a guy who had 11 career starts in college that they traded up to get and tried to make the franchise quarterback. Um, I too think Kenny Pickett is going to be better than Mitchell Trubisky, but uh, you know, I think they look like similar kind of players. Kenny Pickett I think runs a little more than Trubisky does, but
Yeah.
it's just I think they have a similar mentality, or at least they did. To your
I
point,
feel like watching Kenny Pickett play quarterback, he's a lot less just robotic
yes.
than Trubisky. I feel like he's just a smoother quarterback. Clearly
Well,
a guy who's like actually like played quarterback,
well,
you know.
I have kind of played quarterback. I also wonder if one of the first things that the Bears did after they drafted Mitchell Trubisky was talk about how they were working on his footwork with him. And I almost feel like mentally, like they screwed him up from the beginning. Now, don't get me wrong, I still don't think he would have been that great of a quarterback. But if the first thing you're doing when you get to the NFL is they have to fix your footwork and you were the number 2 pick in the draft, something is wrong. There's a problem here. So, to your point about being robotic, I feel like they were telling him like, you have to do this, do it this way, set up this way, you turn your body this way, put your feet here. It's almost like when you teach someone, you see people when they learn how to dance and it's like step 2, 3, 4, step. Like that's how I felt Mitchell Trubisky was. To your point about being robotic, he was like counting the steps in his head. He was counting where he needed, placing his feet where they needed to go, based on what someone told him in a practice somewhere. And that was what he was focused on instead of trying to figure out defenses and where to throw the ball. To your comment a moment ago, the Chiefs now have pick 21, which means they have traded up from 29 to 21, and I'm going to update the board here. All right, so the Patriots obviously didn't like what they had at 21. They have now moved back. What do you see from the Chiefs here? They no longer have Tyreek Hill. They probably need an edge rusher, maybe maybe a defensive tackle as well. What are you seeing from the Chiefs in, hey, we're going to move up and take this?
So the immediate thought is leapfrogging the Green Bay Packers for a receiver here. And the first two people that jump to mind are Christian Watson or George Pickens. So, Aaron Rodgers wants his weapons, right? And they also are going to be in the market for a receiver weapon because they traded away Devontae Adams, so they've got to reload there. And Aaron Rodgers like, give me a receiver, or I'm gonna bitch about it and cause a whole ass piece of drama once again, right? So I think that it's got to be a receiver because they are going to want to be like, you know what, let me get my dude before they get a chance. And my first thought there is that it's probably going to be okay. I feel like this could be the spot for Christian Watson. It's raw. It's a raw player, but great speed to size ratio. And so I think that he's worth taking a little bit of a gamble on here. Though I also think, man, that what you call it, I think that George
George
Pickens
Pickens?
could
Yeah.
also be a very good player here because
Yeah, and I kind of feel like, if you're looking at a guy like Christian Watson with his size, Pickens is almost the same size. I think he's an inch or two shorter, something along those lines. But if you're talking about size and whether or not they can get open and maybe go up and get that ball, um, those are your two guys, right? Those are the wide receivers who you're going to look to. Another guy who does have that size, but probably isn't in the same um, class. He does have some good speed, but again, uh, you know, is a guy like Alec Pierce.
yeah,
I don't think Pierce
he's a
goes
second.
above any of those guys. And actually, the pick is in, and it's Trent McDuffie. So the Chiefs have moved up. They needed a cornerback. They saw Trent McDuffie had dropped, to
Overthought it a little bit, I guess.
into the early 20s and felt
Hmm.
that that was the spot for them. So I don't know if they felt they needed to get in front of Green Bay for that, because I don't think Green Bay is going corner here. But
Yeah, I don't think I would have either, but well, but there's the rub. Baltimore just traded with the Packers. Green Bay has traded down.
so we
Oh,
go
no, no,
back
sorry. So
to
no, I misread that. I misread that. Nope,
okay.
completely disregard. Because I saw Baltimore on the clock and I was like, oh,
Baltimore
what?
was 23.
Word? Yeah,
Remember, we were
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about
That's
that.
23. Yeah, so I misread that. Nope. So the Packers are making this pick. So yeah, I don't think that they needed to trade with them, but I guess they're looking at this like there are other teams potentially, like maybe the Ravens would want someone. Um, because I mean they have Marcus Peters and um, you know Marlon Humphrey, but maybe we want another guy, right? So
Right.
I could have seen that being the thing to do there, and maybe there are just other teams right there, like in the mix where they're just like, look, man, this is a good opportunity for us to get a corner and honestly the best player still available at this point, which is Trent McDuffie for sure. I'm intrigued by this. I am. Now I will say that the Chiefs are seemingly always looking for good, like good secondary players because the defensive part of things tends to not be their strength. So I think that with this, um, and also losing Tyrann Mathieu, this is let me grab a couple of let me grab like a very good secondary player who could play slot, play outside corner, and just be an all around playmaker to maybe fill some of that void left by Matthew being gone.
Well, let me ask
Um,
you this:
this is me
was
trying
the
to
thought
justify it because I'm still a little bit surprised by why you do that. But
for the Chiefs maybe that Baltimore had traded back, but if he falls to 23, they're taking McDuffie. So maybe the Chiefs thought, you know what, I don't.
that's kind of my thought because it's
It's
almost
it's
like
less about it's less about the Packers and more about the Ravens.
yeah, no, I don't really think it was about the Packers because I mean they've got Alexander and they've got Eric Stokes. They've got two good young corners. The Packers don't need a corner. I'm looking at this as like
Right.
Ravens or Baltimore or someone else in that mid 20 mix was potentially gonna do that. So I mean again
I
though,
just
it's like
wasn't sure because it was
what
like,
yeah,
If you're the Ravens, yeah, okay, if he falls to you, you take McDuffie, but you know, if Green Bay doesn't take him, I think they're taking Jermaine Johnson. Is that not the pick for the Ravens at this point? After Green Bay?
it could be, but I mean again, it could also be one of those receivers,
Yeah,
right? So, I mean, that was the thought that I had. Then again, that was way back when they first made the trade, and
right.
we were over here talking about, oh yeah, Jahan Dotson and Traylon Burks will probably be there, and now they're not.
And now they're not. So again, you're looking at Christian Watson, George Pickens, and the key here is Green Bay needs a wide receiver as well. So is it a situation where Green Bay takes the guy that the Ravens may want at 23? That's why that trade was confusing to me when they announced it so early.
Yeah, and
You
like I think that it definitely ended up going that way, where I certainly thought that there was a good chance Burks and Dotson were going to be there, and this just ended up being a different kind of draft, man. People were really going in on those receivers. Let's see what Green Bay does.
I've got it up on my screen, so just tell me when you're good to go.
Quay Walker.
Yep, Quay Walker, inside linebacker from Georgia.
So
I feel like he's a guy who a lot of people may have had a second round grade on. Am I way out of line in thinking that?
it was that way, I think, until literally days ago.
Okay.
And then you started hearing about, I don't think Quay Walker makes it past New England. And maybe he wouldn't have, but New England got the deal and they traded back.
Yeah.
I so Here's the thing. Quay
The Ravens
Walker.
are also trading the pick.
So, and you know what? And here's the thing that I can understand. So I talked to you about, and this is really interesting. So Buffalo now is going to have these two picks right here,
23 and
23 and
25.
25. I'm very intrigued by what they're going to do with this. Um, as somebody who's covering the Patriots. Um, but again, I think that this is a situation where you're looking at the second round of the draft and second and third round, and obviously some talent has been snatched up off the board in terms of wide receivers. But there could still very well be good receivers on, like, the Alec Pierces and the Sky Moores, of the world. And maybe, I mean, at this point, it's kind of hard to see Pickens lasting until the second round.
Yeah,
I
I mean, I don't
feel
see it, but
I kind of feel like he's going in the first round now, given how things have shaken out. But again, I'm kind of looking at this like, you know, they're probably banking on the idea that we're going to be able to find receivers in the second round if we want, or at the back end of the first round. There's going to be
mhm.
someone there if we want them. I am ultimately supportive of not taking Christian Watson at like number 22, like number 21 or 22. I think that his physical traits are awesome. His potential is great. He showed out at the Senior Bowl, but I mean, that's still a pretty raw dude. So second round grade is it still works for me. But I feel like the way this is going is gonna get pushed into the back end of this first round. I am really interested in all of these real damn good defensive players that are dropping right now. This is super interesting to me.
Well, if Watson or Pickens drops to the now 29th pick for the Patriots, I mean, look, you've got the Packers and Patriots drafting back to back. So the Ravens did get that 25th pick, so they moved back two more spots. And I think they moved
Yep,
back two
little
more
shuffling.
spots because those wide receivers we talked about that might have been there at 23 were no longer there.
So it's like, let's like keep pushing it and keep
Yeah.
pushing it and accumulating
So
a little
our
bit
guys
more.
aren't there. Let's drop back, yeah, that makes the most sense to me.
Yep. Yeah, no, and that's a good play. You're asking about like the Packers and Patriots picking. I have been kind of adamant that I did not want, or I did not think that the Patriots were going to take a round one wide receiver, given all of the other needs and honestly more important positions that they need to fill. Like everybody wants to see the round one wide receiver, and they're going to be people like, yes, take Christian Watson, take George Pickens, or like whatever. And I honestly am just like, look at some of the players that are still left on the board here. I would not do that,
Right.
you know, and I still think, and again, I'm gonna pull up what the Patriots got here. I just had it up a moment ago. Um, give me a moment. So the
So the Bills are on the
Patriots.
clock. About 3.5 minutes left here.
And I'm seeing that the pick is in. So the Patriots get 29 and they get the 94th pick. So that's not quite as, I guess it makes sense. I don't know that it was quite the haul that I thought that they might get here, but they've acquired now another third round pick. So
Look, if
that's
anyone knows how to acquire picks for what they need, it's Bill
yeah.
Belichick. So
And I am seeing pretty that the Patriots came out on the good side of points gained here.
right.
In terms of the trade chart. So I think that they can take that extra third rounder now and turn that into a higher pick in the second round if they want.
Let me ask you about what you just said a second ago. The old trade chart, the Jimmy Johnson, trade chart. Is that still a viable way to do things here in the NFL now with analytics, and now we understand what this player, like what these players have turned into, what picks have turned into, what types of players and so on. Is that still viable? Because this was before analytics when this came out, early 90s, Jimmy Johnson taught, and it's just assigning weighted grades or weighted numbers and
Yeah.
saying the first pick is worth this many points, the next pick is 300 points less, the next pick is 200 points less, and so on. Is that kind of an archaic way to do it at this point?
So I think that I've seen so many other different ways of looking at trade charts that are more geared towards analytics than normal. And I think that also take into account to an extent, quarterbacks, right? And so I think that yeah, the Jimmy Johnson like old school chart is perhaps not as good, but and now it's just like inundated. As a matter of fact, one of my friends, Brad Spielberger over at Pro Football Focus, created his own trade chart with somebody else that he works with. So let me see what the Buffalo Bills
Pick is in for the Bills. They went Kyer Elam. So they went corner.
I like it.
Um,
I really like Kyer Elam.
yeah, and I mean, again, another guy that might have had a second round grade, but when you see the guys that have come off the board already, and you see what the Buffalo Bills needed, kind of makes sense. Dallas is on the clock right now. Is so? Let me ask you this: Is it a situation where people still use it even though it's outdated because it's like a common currency where everyone knows that version instead of everyone coming up with their own version of weighted grades and so on? And if I take American dollars and I go to Germany and I try to convert it, the conversion's never quite right. So it's very similar to, well, the Ravens weight their picks this way because they're using these analytics, but the Bills weight their picks this way. And there's no way they're going to come to an agreement on what they're worth because they're coming off of different numbers.
So I can't even say necessarily that like everyone uses the Jimmy Johnson trade chart. I've seen a lot more people kind of um maybe not slamming it, but kind of just being like, whatever.
Right.
Um so I think that you know, I don't necessarily think that everybody's just using the old stuff the way that they used to. But that said, like I don't know what everybody's trade chart is. I think that Bill Belichick, I mean, I kind of heard he kind of does his own thing, right? He has
Right.
like his own trade chart. So I can't necessarily tell you what that is. I just tell you that he loves doing it, loves trading back. And I think that in this case, I'm good with it. And I've seen um I've seen people kind of saying like, Trent McDuffie and Kyer Elam would have been, strong picks, as would Quay Walker. But I still, again, ultimately, when I think about what the Patriots have done here, picking up that extra pick in round 2 and 3, I think might still be more valuable. And again, Quay Walker would have been a solid pick, but I don't think he's a better player than Devin Lloyd. I don't. I think that he's a more like his athleticism, right, and like his potential, his tools might be higher, but is he a better player? No, he's not. And so I'm not going to get upset about them trading down to potentially have a shot, like still at like a Devin Lloyd or an edge like Jermaine Johnson, or even some of these other edges that we're not even talking about. Arnold Ebiketie is actually a name that just came across my screen from Penn State, who I think is a very explosive pass rusher. And like he could be an option at the top of the first round, or at the back end of the first round, I should say. So I'm good with this. And I feel like generally the Patriots played this well. Instead of being forced to take a guy that maybe you didn't grade so highly that you wanted him at 21. And I'm going to say this. I like Trent McDuffie. Again, I mentioned Kyer Elam probably would have been a more like a higher upside pick, But again, right? Like a guy who's maybe more of a back end first round guy who was getting more buzz as time went on. But again, did you value him enough to take him at 21? Or do you like other guys just as much? You might be able to have Andrew Booth Jr., who is kind of Trent McDuffie light, honestly. You might get him at pick 29. You'll probably still have a shot at Kyler Gordon. Kyler Gordon is Trent McDuffie's teammate, also very athletic and kind of similar sort of profile in terms of the way they play. And Quay Walker, you could get a better player than Quay Walker by getting Devin Lloyd or Nakobe Dean if you wanted, though Nakobe Dean doesn't quite fit the Patriots profile linebacker. So I just don't see, because I'm like kind of seeing it already. The people are thinking like, I don't know about this. Like, no, I feel like the
Let,
Patriots played this right. Sorry, I
let
was
me ask
rambling
you
about.
this: as far as what's going on right now, the Cowboys are on the clock. I was gonna say, hey man, we're moving along at a pretty good clip here in this draft.
We
Um,
were.
and then the Cowboys showed up and decided to run off all 10
Screw
minutes of
this.
the clock.
God, Jerry Jones, man.
It
So
is
now it's just kind of like, do I
it is
really want
showing the
this
pick
guy?
is in. They do need defensive line help. The best available, I think, across the board is Jermaine Johnson. It seems like the most logical choice, but it's Jerry Jones, and who knows what's going to happen here.
You know what,
Um,
Jerry? You know what came in mind here is that it could be Jermaine Johnson, sleeper pick here, maybe Devontae Wyatt. Wyatt fell because of potential domestic violence
Domestic, yep,
charges
yep.
and issues off the field. At the
That's
same time,
right up Jerry Jones's
that
alley.
has never stopped the Cowboys from
That's
taking him.
right up Jerry Jones's
And
alley.
Devontae Wyatt, people kind of looked at Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis as like pretty similar kind of cats, with Devontae Wyatt potentially being a little bit more of a 3-down guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see them like, damn, Devontae Wyatt fell this far. Sure, I'll do this. At the same time, again, if you want best player available, you might go Jermaine Johnson here. I am also, again, going to throw out the name, and I might do it again before the first round is up. Arnold Ebiketie. I think that's somebody we should be checking out here at the back end of the first round. If not back end first round, early second. After we see
Is
this,
Ebiketie a guy that if he drops one more spot, Baltimore sticks and drafts him? Well, the Cowboys did Cowboys things. They drafted Tyler Smith, offensive tackle from
all right,
Tulsa.
okay,
So, you know what? Hey, you need
okay,
a tackle. He was probably
all right,
tackle was probably their most pressing need.
yep,
So,
sure,
hey, at that spot makes sense, understandable.
yep.
Well, so now I have a question.
You got a
Now, if
nice little bookend situation. Tyron Smith and Tyler Smith. Wow. Oh, that's going to be confusing.
a
Shit.
couple of T Smiths,
Yeah.
um, the Ravens are now on the clock. I was thinking that maybe the Cowboys went with Jermaine Johnson, but he's still on the board. And he's fallen pretty far here, I think, from what people thought might happen. So is this he's just not the guy people thought he was? No one seems to think he's that guy. Or is this a situation where the Ravens are going to get the steal of the draft or the first round of the draft at this point?
So I think that with sorry, with Johnson, the knock I sort of heard on him was that he might be at his ceiling kind of already. That maybe the upside, to develop wasn't good. Like he's plug and play and he can jump in right now, but he kind of is what you're getting. And so that's not necessarily always something that you're looking for at the top of the draft. Now, it'd be one thing if he was just transcendently good, and then it's like, okay, well, maybe he might not get much better than this, but he's already really damn good, so we might as well. It kind of seems like people view him as a good player,
Good,
and
not
that,
great.
yeah, and that you can take a good player later in the first round,
Sure.
if at all. So it's a bit surprising to me because I feel like we're kind of like waiting for somebody to take him. But maybe teams are, and I mean, this is something that we've seen with the receivers a little bit, right? is that maybe it's the traits thing. Maybe it's the I want a little bit more bang for my buck here. And that getting Jermaine Johnson at like pick 30 or 29, maybe.
I knew you were going to go back to the Pats.
Maybe getting him at pick 29 is more palatable because it's like, okay, back end of the first round, you kind of don't know always what you're going to get. I'm good with a good player here. And I also now that, and I mean, I tweeted this to somebody earlier. I cannot wait for the Patriots to potentially trade up in the second round. That's what they did last year. I feel like that is absolutely the move that I am looking for. They are probably trading up on day 2. I mean, who knows? They might not. They might just like, take the pick because they've got 54 and they've got I think they've got now 2 third-round picks. So, but still, like that was what they did last year. They did not necessarily need a defensive tackle, but they went and traded up for Christian Barmore. So I'm looking at maybe that kind of thing then, especially if you keep getting some fallers here.
Speaking of teams that don't necessarily need something, but might have something fall to them, and this might be a stretch, but 2 picks from now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a first-round pick at 27, and Tom Brady, almost retired, isn't going to obviously play forever. Is the possibility of them drafting Malik Willis completely out of the realm? I mean, is that just off the wall? Because if he doesn't go to Tampa at 27 and nobody trades into the first round, there's going to be one quarterback taken in the first round because Willis is not going to any of the teams that are remaining. So is this out of the realm of possibility that that Tampa Bay may take a guy like Malik Willis if he's still available at 27 if no one trades up to get him?
It's hard to tell because it depends to me on if they like Kyle Trask. Like I think that I don't see it as much because of Kyle Trask being there right now. I mean, that said, it's certainly possible because you don't. I mean, maybe you just take a guy and it's like, you know what, fine, like bring him in for, and they will duke it out for when it's time for
Who's the heir apparent to Tom Brady?
Yeah,
Have fun.
but I don't think that. Sorry, I don't think that's going to happen because Tom Brady is here. So I think you probably just take something to win now because you don't know how much longer you're going to have him for. So I don't think they're going to take a quarterback.
Well, on back-to-back picks now, they have wasted our entire night. Both the Cowboys and the Ravens are taking the full allotment of 10 minutes here. So the Ravens are still on the clock. I'm not showing a pick in yet, but we do see up on the screen if you're watching on ESPN that trade from previously. Ravens drop back to 25th. The Bills got the 23rd, but the Ravens also get a 4th-round pick this year from the Bills. So that was helpful for them in acquiring some additional draft capital, and all they did was drop back 2 spots. We talked about maybe those wide receivers that they were looking for weren't there at 23, so why not get an extra pick in there? The crawl does say the pick is in, so we'll see what the Ravens do here. We have kind of talked about what do they need. They could use a linebacker. They could use a defensive end and Jermaine Johnson. They could also use a little offensive line help, but there's not really anyone. Maybe Tyler Linderbaum if they need a center, but there's not really any offensive line help to be had. More than likely here at the back end of the first round, everyone else is kind of a second or third round talent, at least based on grades. Kyrie, tell me where Baltimore goes here, and then on a secondary level, Tennessee is drafting right behind them. They
So
did get
I cheated inadvertently
oh,
and saw the pick.
look at you.
So do you want me to spoil it for
Yeah,
everybody?
fire away, spoil it. We're live. Who cares?
Baltimore Ravens select Iowa offensive lineman Tyler Linderbaum.
So there it was. I was saying, if you're looking at offensive linemen, he's really the only guy that might be worth a first round pick here. And they
Yeah,
needed a center anyway. So Tyler Linderbaum goes to the Ravens at 25 after trading back from 23. Where did that come from? Was that a Twitter pick?
yeah. I was on Twitter.
I was gonna say,
I'm trying to not spoil necessarily,
no, that's fine.
but I am also trying to stay in the game from a job. You know what
Stay
I mean?
stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I Yeah, and you know what? Linderbaum was a guy that, I mean, he was thought of as a top half of the first round kind of pick potentially, or at least like before 20
Yep.
coming into draft season. So getting him at 25, I'm with that. And I mean, again, protecting Lamar Jackson, incredibly important. Because as you've talked about, right? Yes, the Ravens are going to want more receivers. This is absolutely true, but it's going to be kind of hard, for Lamar Jackson to find those long developing plays that they like to sort of run, um, if they're not protecting Lamar Jackson.
Right.
So how about we go ahead and get him a guy who is going to throw people like into the turf and turn them into chalk outlines?
The Titans are on the clock. They also need offensive line help, but to be completely honest with you, as I mentioned, I don't really think there's anyone worth taking here at 26. So unless they trade down, let's skip the offensive line help. They do need a cornerback, and actually, as I'm speaking, it appears that
Look
they
at
have
this.
traded the pick to the Jets. So
Yep.
um, again, like I said, they probably saw, well, our offensive line help is not coming, so they're trading back, getting rid of that draft pick, and now the Jets have their third first round pick of the night. They've already gotten a wide receiver and a cornerback. They're really filling a lot of the issues that they had last year as a 4-win team in the AFC East. So if you are the Jets, I think the only logical reason you trade up here is to get Jermaine Johnson. Um, Kyrie, tell me why that doesn't make any sense.
I mean, yeah, no, I mean, I think that makes sense because I mean they have, you know, some they don't really have an elite pass rusher. I mean, they have solid ones, but they don't really have anybody particularly great. Now the other thing you could look at here is what if they decide they want to, bookend it with, in their corner situation with, you know, Andrew Booth Jr.
Sure.
You could look at that. We might be in Christian Watson territory where it actually makes sense, maybe, to go for that. Um, because again, who they jumped up in front of, right? You know, Tampa Bay maybe not so much that looking for a receiver, but Green Bay definitely probably still in the market for a receiver. So that could be part of it right here. So I honestly don't know where they're going to go. I I don't think it's a given that it's Jermaine Johnson though. I mean, I feel like if that's shown us if we've seen anything right now, I don't think that it's a given that people are like, we got to trade up for Jermaine Johnson. It's like, well, we might as well just let him keep on falling and falling until we decide to pick him.
Sure, but you also, I mean, you think of it this way: the Jets didn't pick for um, another 10 picks or so. So, did they think that Jermaine Johnson was going to fall there? I
I mean,
probably not.
probably not, though I think that even if he doesn't fall, you're still talking about the possibility of an Arnold Ebiketie being around
Sure.
or a Drake Jackson from USC being around. So if they're really concerned about edge, there are still a couple of players in this mix that they could take to where they wouldn't have to trade up for Johnson. I mean, that said, though, if they, I mean, I'm not going to discount it. If they really like Jermaine Johnson and they were like, you know what, we have the capital, we might as well just go ahead and move back. That's what we got this capital for.
Right.
You know, I could see that. I could see it. I mean, because again, we are now in go. It's like if you got this guy and you're just like, I want to get him. He's a good player. Just make the pick. I could see that. But I almost feel like this might be another more of a swing. We shall see. We shall see soon,
Well,
hopefully. Dear
I
God.
do see a lot of what's going on in the NFL, what's going on with this draft,
Yeah.
all over social media. It's okay. You can preempt everything and tell us what you pulled from Twitter.
Yeah, and I'm like having some discussions with folks about um whether or not it's a good idea for them to, trade back, or like the Patriots when I say they.
Right.
Some people are happy about it, some people aren't. I might be about to get into a Twitter fight with somebody who works at the opposite station.
There it is. Jermaine Johnson, defensive
Hey,
end
there you
from
go.
Florida
Good
State.
call.
So,
Good call.
uh, yeah,
There
like I
you go.
said, I mean, to
The
me,
slide
that
is
made the
over.
most sense. A guy who
Yeah.
dropped
Yep.
at least 10 spots, maybe more, depending on where guys had him
Yep.
on their board. It made the most sense for them to come back up. And
Yeah,
I
because
think,
I mean, you could look at um the Bucks, and I mean, like, yeah, maybe you could say like, oh yeah, Tom Brady, might want another like offensive weapon, or what have you. But you know what? That this might be the thing where maybe the Bucks would do that. You know what I
right.
mean? Because they're trying to build a championship team right now.
Well, and this is the spot. If that's the case, then this is where you're doing it. So the Buccaneers are on the clock with that 27th pick. So I'm gonna. Oh, and actually, they are no
Jacksonville
longer on the clock. They
Jaguars,
have traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So
another receiver.
the Jags move back up into the first round.
Interesting. Oh my God, watch them get another receiver.
I was gonna say, is that what you're calling? You're calling another receiver from the Jags?
My God.
You're watching the Weekend
I
Wake
can't
Up.
tell.
You're
I
watching
can't tell you what to
2022 NFL Draft coverage live with V and Ree from the Weekend Wake Up. You can join the conversation on Twitter. You can join the conversation on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, all over the place. We are everywhere. We're covering live here the NFL Draft. And since we're at pick 27, I'm amazed, Kyrie. We're gonna make it to the end. Knock on wood. We're gonna make it to the end of the first round. We were joking about this before we came on air tonight, that we were pretty much ready to pack it in
Oh yeah.
after the Patriots made their pick last year. What was it, 15? We were pretty much ready to just
Ready
call
to
it a night. I think we made it to like the 17th or 18th pick, and we're like, all right, man, good enough. Both of the teams that we cover or we follow made their picks. The Bears traded up. It was very exciting to get Justin Fields. Mac
Mac
Jones
Jones.
fell to 15, and the Patriots, and they were pretty much at that point where we're like, let's call it a night. Can't get any better than this. It really didn't. I mean, I kept watching, but it didn't get any better. So we knew when to pack it in, but this year, look at this, man. We're moving along here. Pick 27. Jags have traded up to get that pick, and you joke about, well, will they go wide receiver here? But well, again, we look at who's behind them, who they traded up in front of, and they traded up in front of Green Bay, who needs like 6 wide receivers. So is this another? We're gonna go get our guy, even though it might be kind of a stretch. Are they going to get a Christian Watson or a George Pickens or an Alec Pierce or something along those lines, a Sky Moore. What's your take on why the Jags would jump back up here to pick 27?
I mean, it feels like a receiver. Um, I just I don't know. I mean, again, like maybe, and I'm kind of just spitballing here. You might have, um, somebody like a Devontae Wyatt, but again, I feel like Devontae Wyatt is probably falling a little bit out.
What
There's
about a
also
guy like Andrew Booth?
so
They
so
likely need some secondary help.
so Andrew Booth is somebody that I think should be going around this time. Um, and I think yeah that the Jaguars could absolutely use him. I guess I'm kind of like, would you trade up for him? I'm just kind of like, I don't know, but yeah, maybe the answer is yes, because again, if you view him as being closer to that McDuffie Elam cloud of corners, or like kind of that tier of corners, than like Kyler Gordon, who I've seen kind of be in that cloud vaguely, but a little bit more like a clear second round pick, that or like at like 30, or like in the 30s or 40s, right? So maybe he's more in that range. So maybe this is the spot where you're like, you know what, okay, let's go get an Andrew Booth Jr. um that's a good point. Um i i kind of feel like it would make some sense for them to take a receiver if they wanted to do that. It wouldn't shock me, because yeah, they got a bunch of receivers, but they also signed a bunch of them to like big money deals that they're probably going to want to get out of at some point. So it makes sense to have a cost controlled guy there, as opposed to just going and do it with your silly money guys, and
Right.
actually develop somebody behind them. That said, I like your suggestion about Andrew Booth. This is about the right time for that. I just I'm looking at this big board, and I don't know. I'm not 100% seeing a lot of guys that I would trade up for. There is one
Yeah.
guy that I saw that has fallen a little bit is George Karlaftis from Purdue.
Yeah.
Like that's potentially um another candidate that I would look
Well,
at.
look, it's the Jaguars. They need a lot of help. A couple guys we haven't talked about, at least in this particular situation for the Jags, because we weren't sure that they were going to be up here. What do we think about linebacker for them regarding, someone
Yeah.
like N'Kobe Dean,
Yep.
Devin Lloyd? I don't
That
really know
name
if they
that
need an
name just
outside.
N'Kobe Dean in particular just kind of flashed across my brain right before you asked that question.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, I also wonder, like, these guys could have been mid first rounders, possibly, if someone really wanted to go out there and get them, but they've now made it to the end of the first round. Is there a possibility here that this is what they traded up for? Because maybe they had them at 15 on their board, or something along those lines, and they were at they were in the they were 4 spots or 2 spots into the second round. They were at
Yeah.
33, so maybe they come up 6-7 spots to get that guy.
Yeah. So in that case, and I see them showing Daxton Hill from Michigan on this list. Multi-dimensional defensive back, really like him, and he's been linked to the Patriots quite a bit. I could see that being a pick for New England, maybe depending on what happens here. But yeah, if you want to talk about best players still left, Devin Lloyd might be that guy. Devin Lloyd might. I mean, they were talking about this guy being a potential top 10 pick, and they only got turned off when he didn't run as fast of a 40 as they wanted to
Right.
see, and the explosiveness wasn't quite what they wanted to see. But I mean, that's still a damn good football player. So I feel like if you're trading up for that kind of player, like that, like he might truly be the best player available right now.
Devin Lloyd, you're saying?
Devin Lloyd, because I like N'Kobe Dean, and I could understand why somebody might rank him more highly, I guess. Um, in terms of just his production, and he is fast and twitchy, and his coverage ability is very good. But he's undersized. That said, I think that we've seen the Jaguars go with guys like Miles Jack and Telvin Smith in the past. So it could happen here.
Well, the pick is in. They are about to announce the selection, and it is Devin Lloyd. So yeah, I mean, I came to that late, but I was looking at
Nope,
what
that's
was
good
there,
call.
and it was one of those things where it was just like, well, I mean, they kind of need it, so um, I don't really think they traded up to get ahead of anyone in particular. I think it was more this guy
Get the best
fell
player
far
that's still
enough.
left. Yeah.
Yeah, he fell far enough, and we wanted him at 20, 21, something like that, and he fell to 27. So let's just go get him. The Packers are now on the clock. To your point, going back to the Jags, that's a pretty good value pick. It's someone they needed, and he probably was one of the best guys left on the board. Top two, maybe three best available on the board. So the Packers are on the clock. The Packers need all kinds of help, particularly at wide receiver. They already have their pick in, so they knew exactly what they were going for coming into this particular pick. If you are the Packers, who are you taking here?
I mean, I think that again, this is prime. This is George Pickens or Christian Watson kind of territory. I feel like if you want to make Aaron Rodgers happy, that's probably what you do. Um, and I think again, the void left by Devonte Adams is going to loom really large. And I think if you want somebody with the kind of talent to like fill that void like down the line, that maybe you get that guy here, because I don't know about Sky Moore being that guy. That
Mm-hmm.
said, it could be Sky Moore, just kind of a quick guy, who gets open, who kind of like is a juiced up version of like a Randall Cobb or something like that. Maybe that could work. But I feel like, you could sell Aaron Rodgers maybe on, hey man, like, haven't you seen the stats? You can get more, you can get good receivers in the second or third round. But I feel like if you want to make Aaron Rodgers happy here, this might be the moment where it's like, okay, look, what receiver are you feeling like right now?
What if they couldn't care less about Aaron Rodgers and they decide they're not going wide
Yeah.
receiver? Who's your top guy that they would likely take off of the board at this position?
So right now, there's the possibility of a Nakobe Dean if you want another stud linebacker here. They don't need another corner. But if you're concerned about paying Jair Alexander, or you're worried about his health, you could look at an Andrew Booth Jr. here. Those are kind of the big names that I'm thinking of at this point.
Yeah, and I mean they did go inside linebacker in earlier in the first. So do you match up two rookie inside linebackers? And having Nakobe Dean there as well.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like, hey, I mean, in this case though, it would be like, I don't know that you necessarily would want to do that, but one thing that would be intriguing about that is that Quay Walker and Nakobe Dean know how to play together because
Right.
they've been doing it. So that would be the only reason I would think like maybe it's not that far fetched. But no, like do I think they're going to do that? No, I don't. But it's an intriguing sort of idea. But I think I'm still leaning towards a receiver happening right now.
Yeah, so am I. I just don't know how you can go a different direction if you're the Packers. But stranger things have happened in this draft alone. Trades all over the place. Number one wide receivers getting traded in real time. Just some crazy stuff happening in this draft. So if you're the
Ooh,
Packers, who
it was
knows? Who
neither.
knows what's going on?
Devontae Wyatt. That name finally came off the board.
So they
Finally.
did not go wide receiver. I was wrong again. What else is new? Devontae
So
Wyatt.
they picked another Georgia guy that
Yeah.
Another Georgia guy that Quay Walker played with up the
So I mean,
middle.
I guess the point here is to just build up Georgia's defense in Green Bay and just call it a
Yeah,
night.
I mean that defense could be pretty nasty. I gotta say. So I'm really interested here to see what they're going to do. My guess right now is Andrew Booth Jr. I think he fits the profile for what the so I'm skipping ahead to the Patriots now.
Got it. Yep. No, I
Um,
I, I was following you.
so my guess would be Andrew Booth Jr. because I think that he is what the Patriots like in corners. Um,
What about N'Kobe Dean? Is there a possibility they go with something like that?
there is a possibility. I think that it would be a bit of a surprise because he is not typically the kind of size that you would expect from a Patriots linebacker. They're
Got it.
typically 240 pounds and heavier.
Right.
Though I think they are making a concerted effort to get faster. So from that perspective, N'Kobe Dean could be the pick. And they do also have a big linebacker they would have a big linebacker next to him in Jawan Bentley. So you could have Jawan Bentley taking all the lumps and having N'Kobe Dean flying around.
All right. So maybe Booth, maybe Dean. Do you see them possibly taking Christian
Woo!
Watson or George Pickens?
Spicy pick by the Patriots.
See, they beat me to it.
So you're talking about wide receivers.
Yes.
Okay, so no wide receiver for the Patriots. They went with Cole Strange, a guard.
Really?
That is not what I thought was going to happen in round one. I thought that was going to be
So
around
here's the
2
funny thing
or
about
3.
that. I was just talking about, shows you how much I know. I was just talking a little while ago about there's no way that anyone takes another offensive lineman in the first round because none of them are graded anywhere near there. And you have a guy like Cole Strange who was probably graded as a third rounder, maybe. Um, and you have the Patriots going ahead and taking him 6'5", 307 out of Chattanooga.
Dang.
You have the Patriots taking him with the 29th pick in the first round. It's just crazy.
That I'm telling you, that's a little spicy. I think that is going to upset people in Foxborough. I'm
Well, you don't. I mean, of course they're you know, again, you're taking a guy that might have had a third round grade, um, but I guess if you're Bill Belichick, haven't you built up enough equity where they just kind of leave him alone?
no, not really. No, no, they are not leaving him. They are not going to leave him alone about this. They are going to hammer him out here. I I am a bit surprised and I don't love it.
All right, so break
here's
this
the thing
break
because like
this down. You are not a Patriots employee, but you're an employee that writes for the Patriots, writes about the Patriots. When you write this down and you look at this and you break down this pick, which direction are you going, Kyrie? I mean, you're looking at it like, all right, he's got a plan. There's an idea here. But what are you looking at when you see this pick and go, this second round, third round, but they got him in the first?
to me it's a reach. Now here's the reason I'm not horribly surprised is because their biggest need by far was offensive guard. Like they had just nobody. Giant gaping hole at left guard. I mean, it could be left or right guard, but chances are that they were going to play Michael Onwenu at right guard because I think that might be his more natural position. So, but they were looking at playing like James Ferentz, just a backup, right? So, yeah, that was a huge issue. Now, I think the other thing this says is that people are typically looking at the Patriots like, oh yeah, they always just draft guards in the fourth or fifth round. Um,
Well, let me ask you this: could they just not find someone to trade back, maybe 10 spots with? Because you could have gotten him 10 spots from now, early in the second round. Their next pick wasn't, it wasn't until later, mid or later second round. So I mean, I get that. You're probably not going to want to draft him 30 spots from now.
yeah,
But I'm just wondering if they just couldn't they Belichick just couldn't find the right trade partner to kind of get out of the 29th spot and say, let's get a little more draft capital and we can still get our guy. So he was almost, I don't want to say forced, but hey, this is the guy we want. This is the guy we're going to take. We just have to take him at 29.
yeah, I think that's probably what it was. They probably would have traded down again if they could have. And I do think that I've seen people say that the Patriots wanted Devin Lloyd, but obviously he was gone. So then you switch to Plan B. I think it's just a bit. Yeah, I have a hard time believing that this was really Plan B here. I'm
Yeah.
surprised about Andrew Booth not going to the Patriots. I'm not going to lie to you, because I think that he was exactly the kind of player that they would want. Now, I mean, that doesn't mean that they can't maybe trade up, if he falls out of the first round, but I think he's probably going to go pretty fast. But I'm kind of in crunch mode now for writing, so I'm gonna have. I don't think I can multitask any longer.
That's
Um,
fine. You know what? The Chiefs are on the clock. We've got 3 picks left. It's the Chiefs, the Bengals, and it's no longer the Lions. It is. Oh, maybe it is. They keep that pick. It's the Vikings. My mistake. That's how the Lions ended up trading up. So we've got the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Vikings. Kyrie, I know you gotta jump here. So it's all good. We had another great draft. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate
Absolutely,
everyone
man.
who
That's fun.
watched. I know we had some viewers on Facebook as well as YouTube. I know Nolan was on YouTube, throwing some texts my way with his thoughts. This this draft, I mean, it's not the first round of this draft. I know it's not over, but has been crazy, crazy trades, some crazy picks. Never disappoints, and I think, uh, look, man, well, same time, same place next year.
Yep.
We haven't been on in a while, as far as Weekend Wake Up goes. I know there are plans for us to re up some shows coming soon. Some big news in Kyrie's life, big news going on in my life as well. But I want to thank everyone for joining us, and keeping us on the air and keeping us honest over here. So, Kyrie, you got anything before we close out here? I know you gotta jump.
Um, just that thank you all for taking the time to do this. It was so fun having done it last year. Um, and I'm glad we were able to reprise this in spite of all the wildness that we have both going on in our lives, new jobs, new kids, you know.
In
My
case you couldn't hear
goodness.
her screaming in the background, that was my second daughter, my newest daughter. Jen's not thrilled, but for next year's show, I'll just have the kids on, and they will cover the draft. So that'll
Yes, that will
probably
be
that'll
excellent.
probably go over very well. But no, we appreciate all the viewers. We appreciate all the comments, the texts, and so on. Join us again when the Weekend Wake Up returns, possibly with a new format, but still with me, still with Kyrie, and maybe Matt Moore will join us every once in a while too. He seems to have disappeared, but we still love him. For Kyrie Thompson, WEEI Patriots beat reporter, or as close to beat reporter as he'll
Yeah.
allow us to tell. My name is Vito Abenanti. This has been live 2022 NFL draft coverage with V and Ree from the Weekend Wake Up. Everyone have a great night.